Absurd. A total beast. That was how my father, the emperor, described me as he paced the Golden Dragon Hall, his face twisted in a mask of pure fury. I didn't blame him. The day before, I had been stripped of my title as crown prince, and instead of repenting, I'd spent the night carousing with 8 palace maids. My father, Emperor Wu Di, looked like he wanted to execute me himself. The kingdom was in trouble. We were surrounded by enemies, and the Great Yu Kingdom had sent their third princess, Shangwan Jinjia, to humiliate us. She had issued a poetic challenge that had gone unanswered for 3 days. Not a single scholar in the entire Wu Empire could match her wit. The poem was a direct insult. It spoke of things that were closest yet furthest, deepest yet shallowest, and ended with a declaration that Great Yu was the strongest and most victorious. My father's hands shook as he read it. He felt the weight of a dying dynasty on his shoulders. He looked at his other sons, hoping for a savior, but they were all silent. Meanwhile, back in the East Palace, I slowly opened my eyes. 8 palace maids stood in a row before me, dressed in nothing but thin, sheer silk. They were blushing, looking at me with a mix of shyness and confusion. I didn't understand why they were staring until I felt something warm trickling down my face. My nose was bleeding. I sat up, clutching the silk blankets. I still couldn't wrap my head around the fact that I had transmigrated. In my previous life, I was a student of traditional medicine who had spent 20 years rotting in a hospital bed before finally dying young. Now, I was in the body of Wu Yuan, a disgraced prince. It felt like a dream, or maybe a cosmic compensation for my short, miserable first life. The maids stepped forward to help me, but I waved them off. I needed a moment to think. Before I could catch my breath, the door was kicked open with a violent crash. "All of you, get out," a cold voice commanded. The maids scurried away like frightened rabbits. I looked up and saw a woman standing in the doorway. She was breathtaking. She wore a green gauze robe over a pink lily skirt, her hair held up by a pearl jade hairpin. No celebrity from my old world could even compare to her. This was Xian Ruyan, my crown princess. But she didn't look at me with affection. Her eyes were filled with pure, icy hatred. "Don't you dare call my name," she snapped before I could even speak. The memories of the original Wu Yuan flooded my brain. He had never touched her. Not because he didn't want to, but because she would have killed him. She told me she wanted a divorce. She said that every day spent in this palace with me was like living in hell. She warned me to stop my absurd behavior until the Great Yu delegation left, or her father would ensure I was finished for good. I felt a pang of embarrassment, but mostly, I felt a sense of urgency. If I lost the protection of my title, I was a dead man. History is full of deposed princes who met grisly ends. I couldn't let that happen. I had just been given a second chance at life, and I wasn't going to waste it. I knew about the Great Yu delegation. Our 2 kingdoms had been at war for years, and this peace talk was just another battlefield. If I could humiliate their scholars and send them home empty-handed, I could win back my father's favor. I could become the crown prince again. "Stop dreaming," Xian Ruyan said, her voice dripping with contempt. "You'll never be the prince again. You don't have the character for it." I looked at my beautiful, freezing wife and gave her a dark smirk. "Just watch me, little beauty," I said. "Watch how I take back my throne. I'm going to go meet that delegation right now." She was stunned for a second, then followed me, likely expecting me to make a fool of myself. I arrived at the Yanshin Hall just as the Great Yu princess, Shangwan Jinjia, was laughing at my father. She was mocking the entire Wu Empire, claiming we didn't have a single person of talent. She was demanding 3 border cities as the price for our silence. My father was silent, his face ashen. He was about to concede. The scholars were all on their knees, begging for forgiveness for their incompetence. Even my brother, the second prince, was hiding his face in shame. "Wait a minute," I shouted, my voice echoing through the hall. "It's just a poem, isn't it? I happen to be in the mood for a little fun." I walked into the center of the hall with a cocky stride, ignoring the gasps of the court. My brother sneered at me, and my father's eyes flared with renewed anger. "There is nothing for you here, Wu Yuan," the emperor growled. "Leave before you disgrace us further." I didn't move. I just smiled. The game was just beginning. My father, the emperor, didn't want to lose face in front of a foreign delegation. My younger brother, Wu Zheng, saw the frown on our father's face, and decided to play the role of the caring sibling. "Brother, stop this nonsense," Wu Zheng said, his voice smooth and fake. "You're not well. You should go back and rest." He turned to Princess Shangwan Jianjia with a polite bow. "I apologize for the princess having to see this." Shangwan Jianjia returned the bow, but her eyes were sharp. "It's no trouble. Actually, I'd love to hear the great Wu Crown Prince's masterpiece." The news of my title being stripped had been kept quiet, but she clearly knew. She didn't care if I was the crown prince or a beggar. Anyone who could make the Wu Empire look foolish was useful to her. My father saw right through her. "Enough," the emperor growled. "Escort the first prince back to his palace." Wu Zheng's lips curled into a smirk. He thought my downfall was final. Guards stepped forward to grab me, but I didn't resist. "I can walk myself," I said coldly. The guards backed off. The court officials all sighed in relief, thinking they had successfully stopped the disgraced prince from embarrassing the nation further. Behind me, my wife, Reincarnation, looked even colder than before. I could tell she regretted even coming here with me. But as I took my first step toward the exit, my voice rang out, heavy and powerful. "Those who leave me, yesterday's days cannot be stayed." I took another step. "Those who disturb my heart, today's days bring much distress." The entire hall went silent. Every official who had been looking away in disgust suddenly snapped their heads back. They stared at my retreating back, stunned by the raw emotion and power in those lines. I wasn't the decadent, lazy prince they knew. In that moment, I felt like a mountain. "Those who leave me," Reincarnation whispered, her hands covering her mouth. She looked at me with pure shock, a flicker of shame crossing her eyes. My father stood frozen, his hand hanging mid-air. Just as I reached the door, Shangwan Jianjia finally found her voice. "Wait. Please stay," she called out. She knew she shouldn't be stopping me, but those lines had touched something deep inside her. She needed to hear the rest. I didn't stop. I kept walking with a smirk on my face. Did they think the crown prince was someone they could just whistle for like a dog? Wu Zheng realized the tide was turning and tried to cut me off. "Princess, let's get back to business." "Shut up," my father roared at him. Then, he looked at the guards. "Bring the first prince back inside." Reincarnation watched me walk back in, her eyes wide. I think she realized right then that the world she knew was about to be flipped upside down. I didn't wait for my father to speak. I took another step forward and let the rest of the poem fly. Longing for greatness, my thoughts soar high. I wish to climb the blue sky and grasp the bright moon. Draw a sword to cut the water, and the water flows more. Raise a cup to drown your sorrows, and the sorrows only grow. I walked right up to the front, staring Shangwan Jianjia directly in the eyes. The hall was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. She looked like she'd been struck by lightning, repeating that line about the sword and the water over and over in her head. It was a masterpiece, and she knew it. I finished the poem with a final, booming line. "Since life in this world does not go as planned, tomorrow I shall let down my hair and drift away on a boat." The silence stretched on. Shangwan Jianjia's body trembled. The rest of the court looked like they had seen a ghost. They looked like they'd been slapped across the face. The shame of their earlier insults was written all over them. Even my father had to pick up his tea to hide how much his hands were shaking. "Princess," I said, my voice calm, "does my poem meet your standards?" Her heart was racing. She was a scholar, and she knew that only the greatest saints in history could produce something this profound. Did you write this?" she asked, her voice trembling. I didn't blink. In this world, the history of my old home didn't exist. I could claim the works of Li Bai and Du Fu, and no one would ever know. "I rarely write," I said arrogantly, "mostly because I feel I have no rivals." "I wonder, Princess, are you worthy of being my opponent?" She almost admitted defeat right there, but Wu Zheng couldn't handle it. "Quiet," he screamed. "You aren't the crown prince anymore. Are you trying to start a rebellion with this arrogance?" I didn't even have to answer. My father spoke first. "It's fine. He's always been eccentric. Let him be." Wu Zheng looked like he'd swallowed a fly. He knew if I kept this up, his dream of the throne was dead. "Brother, stop lying," he spat. "You've never written a word in your life. We are men of great Wu. We don't steal the work of others." Suddenly, his cronies in the court started shouting, accusing me of plagiarism and demanding I apologize. I felt a surge of rage. Not a single person in this room was on my side. I saw my father's expression wavering. He was starting to believe them. This was my only shot at survival. If I lost the title tonight, I wouldn't live to see morning. I was ready to fight back when a clear, sharp voice cut through the noise. I can prove it. This poem was written by the first prince himself. I looked over, surprised and relieved. It was my wife, Reincarnation. She was the daughter of the Empire's greatest general. Even though her father was away at the border, no one dared ignore her word. I noticed her face was bright red. She was clearly a terrible liar, but she stood her ground. She caught me looking at her and gave me a warning glare that said, "If you screw this up, you're dead." I gave her a dark, confident smile. "Just watch me, my queen. The truth will show itself," I said, turning back to the princess. "Let us compete, and the world will see who is the genius and who is the fool." I looked at Wu Zheng and gave him a very specific middle finger gesture. He didn't know what it meant, but he definitely felt insulted. I didn't have time for him, though. "Princess Shangwan," I said, "please, show me what you've got." Shangwan Jianjia had come prepared with a poem she had spent a month perfecting. But now, she looked hesitant. She knew her work couldn't compare to what I had just recited. Still, with the pride of her nation on the line, she steeled herself and began. "Flowers bloom, but not for all to see. Flowers fall, and we share the misery. If you ask where my longing lies, it's where the flowers bloom and die." It was a beautiful, sentimental poem about love and loss. The scholars in the room started nodding, calling it a masterpiece. It was good, really good. But compared to the giants of Chinese history living in my head, it was nothing. Most people in the hall nodded, but then slowly shook their heads. They respected Shangwan Jianjia's talent, but they knew her poem couldn't touch the masterpiece I had just delivered. The great Mission wasn't going to give up that easily, though. One of their clever officials stepped forward. "Since this is a competition, it should be back and forth," he said smoothly. "The first round is over. I wonder if Prince Wu Yuan can produce another masterpiece that surpasses our princess." It was a low blow, but he had a point. My country's scholars couldn't find a way to argue. Even the great Mission gave Shangwan Jianjia a look, signaling her to push the advantage. She took a deep breath, regained her composure, and smirked. "Exactly. If Prince Wu Yuan has nothing else to offer, then Great Yu wins this round." The civil and military officials around me sighed. They clearly thought my first poem was a fluke, a one-hit wonder. A miracle doesn't happen twice. My younger brother, Wu Zheng, couldn't wait to see me fail. "Big brother, don't stall," he urged, his voice dripping with fake encouragement. "I believe in you. Show us what you've got." Everyone could see through him. He wasn't cheering for me. He was waiting for the punchline. I let out a cold laugh. "Don't be in such a hurry, little brother. With a temper like yours, it's hard to imagine you handling any real responsibility." Wu Zheng's face turned purple. I could practically hear him cursing me in his head. He was probably wondering when his useless brother had developed such a sharp tongue. Shangwan Jianjia had her confidence back now. "Don't talk big, Prince Wu Yuan. I agree with the second prince. Let's not waste everyone's time." I turned to her and dropped a total curveball. "You're actually quite pretty." The room went silent. Everyone looked at me in shock. I could see the thought crossing their minds. Asterisk, there he is. There's our trashy, lecherous prince. Asterisk. Shangwan Jianjia frowned, her lip curling in disgust. "I've heard of your reputation, Prince Wu Yuan. It seems the rumors didn't do you justice." Beside me, Reincarnation glared at me with pure hatred. I could tell she was regretting ever standing up for me. I held up a hand to cut the princess off. "Let me finish. I'm saying you're pretty, but you're nothing compared to my wife, Reincarnation." "You," Shangwan Jianjia snapped. She was famous for her beauty and talent. No one had ever told her she was second best. She looked at Reincarnation, then back at me, her eyes burning. I actually feel sorry for Reincarnation. She's a flower stuck in the mud, living a hard life as your princess consort. I saw Reincarnation nodding in agreement out of the corner of my eye. I almost choked. "Your poetry isn't great, but your mouth sure is," I said, staying calm. "Don't get angry. I'm just saying, your personality isn't as beautiful as your weapons, and your poems are mediocre. I don't know how you had the nerve to come here and show off." The Great Wu officials finally let out the breath they'd been holding. They had been bullied by this mission for days, and seeing the princess turn red with rage felt like a victory in itself. Even my father, the emperor, let out a hearty laugh. Wu Yuan, it's just a competition, he said, though he was clearly enjoying himself. Don't ruin the harmony. Shangwan Jinjia grit her teeth. Then please, Prince Wu Yuan, let me witness another masterpiece. Fine, I said. I'll give you a lesson today. I bowed to my father, then looked at her. Since you used flowers and personal feelings as your theme, I'll do the same. I wouldn't want you making excuses later. I took a breath. The room went quiet. I began to recite. When will the spring flowers and autumn moon end? How much of the past do we truly know? The moment that first line left my lips, Shangwan Jinjia's face fell. Xi and Ruyan's eyes lit up. I didn't stop. Last night, the east wind blew through my small tower again. I ask you, how much sorrow can one person hold? It is just like a river of spring water, flowing endlessly to the east. When I finished, the silence was absolute. It was like the entire palace had died. The imagery was overwhelming. They were all picturing it, the passage of time, the weight of memory, the sheer scale of a sorrow that flowed like a great river. It didn't just answer her poem, it crushed it. Her sorrow was a falling flower, mine was a flood. After a long moment, I broke the silence. Everyone, don't forget to breathe. A collective gasp filled the room as everyone finally exhaled. If I hadn't spoken, some of those old scholars might have actually passed out. Princess Shangwan, I said, stepping toward her. Are you convinced? She took a step back, looking defeated. She glanced at her delegation, but they all had their heads down. She bit her lip, the bitterness clear on her face. Prince Wu Yuan's poetry. I am humble. I concede. The Great Wu officials exploded into cheers. They had walked in here expecting a total loss, and now my useless self had flipped the script. My father was beaming, trying to hide his shock behind a mask of royal calm, though his smile was reaching his ears. Thank you, Imperial Father, I said, knowing I had won this round. Wu Zheng's face was as black as charcoal. I could see the murderous intent in his eyes, but he couldn't do anything while I was the man of the hour. The Prime Minister, Wei Gong, stepped forward. Since the princess has conceded, according to our agreement, those 3 border cities now belong to Great Wu. The crowd cheered again. This was a massive win for our national pride. But then, Shangwan Jinjia spoke up. When did I say I surrendered the cities? The room turned hostile instantly, but she remained calm. I admit, the prince's poetry is world-class. But our agreement was the best of 3 rounds. The first was poetry. The second is music. The third is your choice, martial arts. I frowned. Why do you get to pick 2 out of the 3 categories? She laughed, finally finding a chance to mock me. It seems the prince is truly ignorant. Don't you know? Out of those 3 cities, 2 currently belong to Great Yu. We hold the stakes. I froze and looked around and saw the grim faces of our officials. No one contradicted her. Damn it, I really didn't know that. The original Wu Yuan was even more of a mess than I thought. The problem was, I didn't know the first thing about ancient music. Was I about to lose everything? What's the matter? Shangwan Jinjia asked, her eyes dancing with provocation. Is the prince afraid? Before I could answer, Wu Zheng jumped in. My big brother is never afraid. He said it loudly, but I knew his game. He was convinced I'd make a fool of myself. If I lost the music round, my glory from the poetry would vanish instantly. I glanced at him. The guy was transparent. But I couldn't back down. My life and the throne were on the line. Father, I said, turning to the emperor. I accept the challenge. Please grant me your permission. The emperor hesitated. He knew I could write poetry now, but music? That was a different beast. Still, he saw the fire in my eyes. Very well, he said. Since you are so confident, I will have the victory wine prepared for you. The court was a sea of mixed emotions. Everyone knew what was at stake. If I won one more round, my status as the crown prince would be untouchable. The atmosphere in the hall shifted instantly. I could see the gears turning in the minds of the ministers. They were recalculating their loyalties, wondering if they'd backed the wrong prince. Across the room, Shangwan Jinjia couldn't wait any longer. She pulled out a white jade flute, her eyes burning with a sudden, fierce intensity. It was like a war drum had started beating in her soul. Prince Wu Yuan, listen to this first, she challenged. Before anyone could react, a sharp, high-pitched note pierced the air. It was a commanding opening. I froze for a second as the music washed over me. Suddenly, it felt like a hallucination was taking over the room. I didn't just hear the music, I saw it. I saw thousands of horses galloping toward me, a sea of soldiers like gathering clouds, and the flash of cold blades. It was a song of war. Beneath her elegant exterior, Shangwan Jianjia hid a terrifying ambition. When the last note faded, a cold sweat broke out on the backs of the officials. My father, the emperor, sat on his throne with a heavy expression. I could see the conflict in his eyes. Here was a foreign princess with the heart of a conqueror, ready to expand her empire. Then he looked at his own sons, all of them scheming for a golden chair while the enemy was at the gates. I finally understood why Great Yu had sent her to handle these negotiations. Shangwan Jianjia looked around the room, her eyes full of lingering battle lust. No one dared to meet her gaze. She had achieved her goal. Even in a peace talk, she wanted Great Yu to hold the leash. She never expected to lose, especially not to a trash prince like me. The envoy from Great Yu smirked, his face full of arrogance. The Great Wu officials looked indignant, but they lacked the confidence to speak up. My father looked like he had a toothache. I didn't realize your specialty was blowing the flute, I said, my voice dripping with playfulness. You certainly have a talented mouth. The war goddess looked at me, confused by my modern phrasing, but the mocking glint in my eyes made her blood boil. What is that supposed to mean? She snapped, her face turning to ice. Nothing much. Just saying you play well. But honestly, my 8 palace maids could probably give you a run for your money. She exploded. How dare you? You compare me to lowly servants. I held up a hand to stop her. Princess, don't get your robes in a twist. Do you want to compete or not? She gritted her teeth, forcing her rage back down. Then please, Prince Wu Yuan, show us what you've got. I gave a dry laugh, but internally, I was sweating. I didn't know how to play a single ancient instrument. I was planning to just sing a modern song and hope for the best. At least I wouldn't look like a total idiot. But when I turned around, I saw Xian Ruyan had already set up a zither. She stared at me impatiently. What are you waiting for? Get over here. Me? I pointed at myself, doubting my own ears. She frowned, her tone sharp. Who else? Weren't you always practicing your skills while flirting with those pretty musicians and maids in the palace? I blinked. Following her annoyed gaze, I sat down and placed my hands on the strings. Suddenly, a wave of familiarity hit me. My fingers felt like they knew exactly where to go. I was shocked and relieved. It turned out the trash prince wasn't completely useless. At least he'd put in the work when it came to chasing women. Let me find the feeling first, I muttered. I started strumming, testing the strings. It was messy, the kind of tune you'd use to tease a girl, but nothing impressive. Shangwan Jianjia's lips curled into a smirk. She thought she'd seen my limit. To her, I wasn't even worth her time. The scholars in the hall shook their heads in disappointment. Even my father's face darkened. He was already thinking about replacing me. Wu Zheng, my dear brother, didn't miss the chance to twist the knife. Father, I've heard my big brother is an expert at this. They say the music and dancing in his eastern palace never stop, night after night. The emperor's face soured as he remembered my scandalous reputation. He was about to call the whole thing off when I spoke up. All right, I'm ready. Everyone, lend me your ears. It was too late for my father to stop me. Everyone expected a shallow, vulgar tune. But I had something else in mind. I didn't know ancient scores, but I knew the melodies of my old world. Combined with this body's muscle memory, I could make it work. Don't laugh if I fall drunk on the battlefield, I whispered. Shangwan Jianjia wanted blood and iron? Fine. I'd give her a massacre. In the face of her indignant glare and the official's doubt, I struck the strings. The sound exploded. It wasn't a gentle melody. It was the roar of an Azura entering the fray. The rhythm was fierce, unstoppable, crashing against her thousands of horses like a tidal wave. It was wild. It was sharp. It was the sound of 1,000,000 soldiers being swept away. If she was arrogant, I was more arrogant. If her music was a wolf's ambition, mine was the song of the entry, a melody that leveled everything in its path. The scholars turned pale. Some of them were actually trembling. Then, I raised my voice and sang. The night is young, the sky is dark, I stand on the surviving battlefield. The song of the entry. 100 battles in the yellow sands, piercing the golden armor. The hall shook. Everyone was vibrating with the intensity of it. Shangwan Jinjia's face went white. She stared at me as if she were seeing a demon on a killing spree. Xian Ruyan, sitting closest to me, looked at me in a daze. She had always despised me, but in this moment, she looked lost. She couldn't figure out which version of me was real. As the final note echoed and died away, I reached out and grabbed her hand. She jumped, startled. "What are you doing?" she whispered. But she didn't pull away like she usually did. "Nothing," I whispered back, leaning in. "It's just that the princess is looking at me like she wants to eat me alive. You have to protect me." Xian Ruyan blinked, then looked over at Shangwan Jinjia. Seeing the heated, stunned look in the other woman's eyes, Xian Ruyan instinctively squeezed my hand tight. Then, she spoke loudly for the whole room to hear. "Princess Shangwan, you lost." Shangwan Jinjia stumbled back, looking at her own people. They couldn't even look her in the eye. The Great Wu officials, from the emperor down to the lowest clerk, were erupting in joy. She couldn't believe it. There was no judge needed. My song had more depth, more soul, and a far grander vision than hers. She had lost to the man she called a waste. The resentment in her eyes flared, but my father's voice boomed through the hall, cutting through the tension. "Princess Shangwan, it seems Great Wu has won this round." She took a deep breath, her face shadowed with defeat. "I didn't expect." "Your Highness, Prince Wu Yuan gave me a massive surprise today," Shangwan Jinjia said, her voice cutting through the silence of the hall. "But what's even more unexpected is that a man as talented as him could actually be deposed. It seems the Great Wu Empire is nothing special after all." Her words were like a physical slap to the face of every official in the room, including my father, the emperor. I suppressed a smirk. I was starting to like this princess. She had guts, but I couldn't figure out her game. Was she trying to help me or ruin me? The scholars and ministers were stunned for a moment, but then the tide turned. One official stepped forward and bowed deeply. "Your Majesty, Prince Wu Yuan's poetry and music reveal a man of great ambition and hidden sorrow. I beg you to give him another chance." "I second that," the Prime Minister shouted, stepping out. "We second that." The rest of the ministers followed suit. In an instant, the political winds shifted. They saw which way the grain was blowing. My restoration as crown prince seemed inevitable. But as I looked at my father, my heart sank. He wasn't smiling. Seeing the entire court rally behind me didn't make him happy. It made him suspicious. He was staring at me, wondering how deep I had hidden my true self and what I was plotting. The emperor's mind is a dark forest. I realized Shangwan Jinjia's praise was a poison pill. By forcing the ministers to take my side, she had made me a threat to my father's power. I caught her eye. She gave me a knowing, mischievous smile. This woman was dangerous. I had to move fast. I stepped forward before my father could speak. "Father, please, hear me out." My father kept a polite smile on his face, but his eyes were cold. "Tell me, you honor." "I've done a lot of thinking," I said loudly. "The position of crown prince should go to the most capable. Even though I am the eldest son, I know my brothers aren't convinced of my worth. I want to set an example. I ask that you appoint the heir based on merit and virtue alone." The room went silent. Some thought I was being an idiot again, but the smart ones looked at me with newfound respect. My father's tension visibly thawed, and he actually laughed. "You honor, you truly continue to surprise me. Fine. Since you have such resolve, I will grant your wish. However, you are still my eldest son. You will remain in the Eastern Palace for now." I breathed a quiet sigh of relief. It wasn't the full restoration I wanted, but as long as I held the Eastern Palace, I was safe. No one would dare touch me openly. My brothers, including the second Prince Wu Zheng, looked like they had swallowed flies. They knew as well as I did. I just needed one more opportunity to take it all back. I shot a provocative look at Shangwan Jinjia. She looked annoyed that her little trap hadn't fully sprung. When she saw the Great Wu officials celebrating their victory, she finally snapped. "Emperor of Wu, a small contest is nothing to brag about," she said, her voice sharp. "Do you dare to play for higher stakes with Great Yu?" My father leaned forward, intrigued. Let's hear it. 3 days from now, our kingdoms will compete again, she declared. If Great Yu loses, we will take the front lines in the war against the Tianli kingdom and gift you 1,008 god crossbows. But if we win, you return the 3 cities we lost, and— She paused, pointing a finger at me. I want him to be my consort. The hall erupted. The 8 god crossbows were the secret to Great Yu's military might. To have them, and to have Great Yu lead the charge in the war, was a deal my father couldn't refuse. All it would cost him were 3 broken border cities and a useless prince he had already tried to throw away. My brothers started shouting in favor of the bed immediately. They wanted me gone. I rubbed my chin, weighing the options. Shangguan Jinjiao was beautiful, sure, but I had no intention of being a trophy husband in a foreign land. Still, this was the opportunity one needed. The princess is a master calculator, I said, stepping up with a grin. I'll agree to the match, but we need to add a condition. She narrowed her eyes. What condition? The princess is stunning, though not quite as lovely as my own wife, I said, enjoying the way her face reddened. Since you're so fond of me, and I happen to be short one maid to warm my bed. If Great Wu wins in 3 days, Great Yu must announce to the world that you will marry me as a concubine. The room gasped. She was a royal princess, a pride of her nation. Being a wife was one thing, but a concubine? That was an insult. You dare? She hissed. If you won't agree, then there's no need for a match, I shrugged. The official stayed quiet. This benefited Great Wu immensely. If we could control her, we'd have the upper hand in everything. To my surprise, she didn't hesitate for long. Fine. I agree, she snapped. She didn't stay a second longer, turning on her heel and leading her delegation out of the hall. Knowing I had pushed my luck enough for one day, I grabbed Xan Rian's hand and left the palace. As we walked through the quiet alleys toward the eastern palace, I looked at her. She seemed lost in thought. Rian, I said softly, do you still want to divorce me? What? She blinked, startled out of her daze. I asked if you still want a divorce. She stammered, looking genuinely conflicted for the first time. I smiled, ready to press my advantage and finally win over my beautiful wife. But before I could speak, her eyes widened. Watch out, she screamed. I spun around. A silver flash was flying through the air, an arrow, moving too fast to dodge. My heart stopped. This is it, I thought. I'm dead. Suddenly, a massive force yanked me sideways. I hit the ground hard. I heard a muffled grunt, then a sharp scream of agony. A black-clad figure tumbled from the rooftops, crashing into the dirt. I looked up, breathless, and saw Xine Ruyan standing over me. Her posture was perfect, her eyes cold and lethal. I stared at her in total shock. My wife, was she always this much of a badass? The move she just pulled was beyond anything I thought a human could do. She looked like a legendary swordswoman straight out of a martial arts movie. I muttered something under my breath, still dazed, and I saw a flash of red touch her perfect face. She quickly composed herself, her expression turning cold and sharp. So, you finally realized I have skills? She snapped. And why didn't you dodge? You just stood there. I pulled myself up, dusting off my clothes. My heart was still hammering against my ribs. It was the first time I'd ever faced an actual assassination attempt. I was scared to death. My reflexes simply couldn't keep up with an arrow moving that fast. I took a breath and calmed down. I remembered now. As the daughter of a great general, Rian was supposed to be trained in martial arts. But in all my memories of her, I had never seen her lift a finger. Thank you for saving my life, dear wife, I said, looking at her with genuine hunger. I have no way to repay you. How about I offer you my body tonight? I swallowed hard. Seriously, a crown princess who was both gorgeous and a total badass? I was falling for her fast. But Rian didn't blush this time. She gave me a look filled with pure, murderous intent. I've told you before, she said. If you want to touch me, you need the ability to conquer me. Otherwise, I'll die before I submit. I finally understood why the original Playboy prince had never managed to get her into bed. She wasn't just a beauty. She was a wild horse that refused to be tamed. But that only made me grin. I haven't forgotten, I replied. And I believe that day is coming very soon. Rian opened her mouth to argue, but she stopped. I could tell she was thinking about how I had just defeated the Great U delegation with those poems. I stepped closer, teasing her. What are you thinking about, Rian? Were you thinking about how handsome I looked back there? A faint blush crept back onto her porcelain skin. Don't be ridiculous. It was just a couple of poems. It's nothing special. Oh, so you were thinking about my poetry. I laughed. That's just the tip of the iceberg. If you like it, I can write you a new one every single day. Being caught in her thoughts made her snap. I shouldn't have even bothered saving you. The mention of the attack brought me back to reality. I felt a chill down my spine. If I wanted to keep my head on my shoulders, I needed to stay on this woman's good side. Just as I was about to say something sweet to smooth things over, a group of palace guards rushed toward us. Your Highness, please forgive us, they cried, dropping to their knees. We failed to protect you. I didn't hold back. I let my anger flare. What do you think you're paid for? An assassin attacks in broad daylight. If the princess hadn't been here, you'd all be burying me right now. The guards trembled. They knew the prince's reputation for being ruthless. They probably expected me to execute them on the spot. But I took a deep breath and waved my hand. Forget it. Where is the assassin? I want to know who sent him. The guards looked at me like they had seen a ghost. They couldn't believe I was letting them off the hook. Even Rian looked at me with a spark of curiosity. Thank you for your mercy, Highness, the lead guard stammered. But the assassin, he had poison hidden in his mouth. When he realized he was wounded and couldn't escape, he took his own life. Damn it, that's cold. As a man from the modern world, the reality of a suicide squad hit me hard. This wasn't a lone wolf, it was a professional hit. If I didn't find the source, I'd be living like a turtle for the rest of my life, hiding my head in a shell. Take me to the body, I said firmly. Rian frowned, her face pale. It's a corpse, Wu Yuan. What is there to see? The guards agreed. Your Highness is of noble blood. Don't let the filth of a dead man ruin your luck. You shouldn't go. I'm going to perform an autopsy, I said. There will be clues. An autopsy? Rian and the guards exchanged confused looks. I blinked. Right. They probably didn't even have a word for forensic science here. No wonder the guard just gave up as soon as the guy died. I'll show you, I said, acting mysterious. Sometimes, the dead can tell us much more than the living. The guards whispered among themselves. They clearly thought I'd lost my mind from the stress of being nearly deposed. But since I wasn't screaming for their heads, they led the way. We walked for about 10 minutes to get to the other side of the palace wall where the body had fallen. Rian followed, likely wanting to see me embarrass myself. When we arrived, a group of men was already surrounding the area. First Prince, please stop, a man called out. The Ministry of Justice will handle the body. We will find the truth. I scowled. Don't give me that bureaucratic nonsense. I'm going in to see for myself. Move. The official didn't budge. Forgive me, Highness, but the Ministry of Justice doesn't allow outsiders to interfere with active cases. Please return to your palace. I narrowed my eyes. Something was wrong. His refusal was too firm, too fast. There was a smell of a cover-up in the air. And what if I insist? I challenged. Are you going to arrest me? I put on my best crown prince arrogance. The official started to look nervous. But then, a loud, mocking voice cut through the tension. The first prince is no longer the crown prince, yet he still acts like one. That sounds like a serious crime against the emperor's decree. I turned to see a man with a smug, punchable face walking toward us. Who the hell is this? I asked. The official I'd been arguing with spoke up quickly. Highness, this is Yu Dequan, the Vice Minister of Justice. He is the son of Lord Yu, the Minister of Justice himself. I didn't even wait for him to finish. I stepped forward and slapped the official right across the face. Hard. Did I ask you to speak? I barked. The official stumbled back, clutching his cheek. I didn't care. Even if I wasn't the crown prince, I was still the emperor's eldest son. I wasn't going to let some low-level lackey talk down to me. If you aren't ruthless in this world, you don't survive. Ruyin and my guards didn't look surprised. The old Wu Yuan was famous for his temper. But Yu Dequan's face turned a nasty shade of purple. Wu Yuan, you aren't the crown prince anymore. How dare you hit my man for no reason? I don't care whose man he is, I growled, stepping into his space. That assassin tried to kill me. No one is stopping me from investigating. Unless you're trying to protect the person who sent him? The guards went still. The air grew heavy. I had said it out loud. If the Ministry of Justice was blocking me, it meant they were hiding something. Yu Daquan looked like he was about to explode. The Ministry of Justice answers only to the Emperor. Yu Daquan sneered, his voice dripping with fake righteousness. I won't let you slander us. I'll be reporting this to the throne myself. Fine, go ahead, I said, waving him off like a fly. Run to my father. In the meantime, I'm investigating this crime. Yu Daquan stepped in front of me, his eyes narrowing into slits. Prince Wu Yuan, as long as I'm standing here, you won't get so much as a glimpse of that assassin's body. I felt a surge of genuine irritation. It was the classic down tiger being bullied by a dog scenario. If I still had my official title as Crown Prince, this little worm wouldn't dare breathe in my direction. I was already calculating which guard's sword I could grab to force my way through when a loud, confident laugh echoed behind us. Lord, you let it go. Our eldest prince was just attacked. He's frustrated and probably just wants to kick the corpse to blow off some steam. Why not show some mercy? Just close one eye and let him through. We all turned. A tall, well-built man with striking features was walking toward us. He carried himself with an air of effortless superiority. The moment I saw him, my gut twisted with a strange, instinctive dislike. It got worse when I noticed where his eyes were fixed. They were locked onto my wife, Rian. I cursed under my breath. Great. Even a deposed prince has romantic rivals. I didn't recognize him immediately. The original Wu Yuan had been so arrogant that he never bothered remembering anyone he considered beneath him. You don't even recognize Zhang Kuei, the top martial arts scholar of Great Wu? Yu Daquan asked, his tone mocking. I suppose the prince really has been living under a rock. He and Zhang Kuei clearly had a cozy relationship. Before I could snap back, Yu Daquan continued with an oily smile. Perhaps you haven't heard. Zhang Kuei is taking the civil service exams this year too. Word is, he'll be the top scholar there as well. He'll be the first man in our history to master both the sword and the pen. Zhang Kuei put on a show of being humble, waving his hand dismissively. Brother, you flatter me. The results aren't out until tomorrow. Anything can happen. With your talent? It's a guaranteed win, Yu Daquan insisted. I couldn't listen to the bootlicking anymore. I looked at Yu Daquan and asked, is he your father? Yu Daquan blinked, confused. What? You're sucking up to him so hard. I figured he must be your dad. I deadpanned. Yu Daquan's face went from purple to beet red. You. Zhang Kuei stepped in, his expression calm and patronizing. Brother, you stay calm. Prince Wu Yuan did some good work today. He's just a bit overexcited. Yu Daquan paused. Good work. He was only a vice minister. While his father had been at the palace banquet, he'd been stuck outside waiting for news. All he knew was that an assassin had appeared, and he'd rushed over to secure the scene. Zhang Kuei didn't seem interested in explaining my recent victory over the Great Yu delegation. Instead, he sighed dramatically. It's a shame I arrived late, Zhang Kuei said, looking at Ruyan. Otherwise, I would have sent those Great Yu diplomats packing myself. They wouldn't have dared to demand a 3-day contest. I suppose Prince Wu Yuan simply lacked the presence to handle them properly. I almost laughed. This guy was a professional at talking big. Brother, you, Zhang Kuei said, turning back to the official. Do me a favor. Let the prince see the body so he can vent his frustration. Yu Daquan hesitated, but Zhang Kuei gave him a look that suggested there was a hidden agenda. I caught the subtext immediately, but I didn't care. I needed to see that body before the evidence went cold. As I started toward the corpse, Zhang Kuei didn't follow. Instead, he moved toward Ruyan. Sister Ruyan, he said, his voice dropping into a soft, intimate tone. You look so pale. How can I explain this to my adoptive father? I brought some supplements for you. I'll have them sent to your room later. I nearly tripped over my own feet. I spun around, catching Ruyan's eye. She looked a bit awkward. He is my father's godson, she explained quickly, seeing my expression. It's natural for him to call me sister. Don't be so surprised. That didn't make me feel any better. In fact, I like this guy even less now. Go on, Highness, Zhang Kuei said with a thin smile. Go do your work. I'll stay here and keep Sister Ruyan company. He turned back to her, completely ignoring me. Ruyan, I heard you've hit a bottleneck in your training. They say poetry and painting can help clear the mind. I've written a few poems recently. I was going to use them against the Great Yu scholars, but I didn't get the chance. Why don't you critique them for me? Rian looked trapped. She had just heard me recite some of the greatest poetry in human history back at the banquet. Compared to that, whatever this guy had written was probably garbage. But she was too polite to shut him down. Rian, come here. I called out. I'm about to show you how a dead man speaks. Rian's curiosity won out. She looked at Zhang Kuei and gave a small, apologetic bow. Brother, let's talk about poetry later. I want to see who was bold enough to try and kill us in broad daylight. She walked over to me, leaving Zhang Kuei standing there. For a split second, I saw his mask slip. His fists clenched, and a flash of pure, murderous hatred crossed his face. Then, just as quickly, it was gone. Very well, Zhang Kuei said, following us. I'd like to see how the prince performs an autopsy. We reached the body. Yu Dequan was already standing there, looking bored. Prince, I've already searched him. He has nothing on him. Don't waste your time pretending you know what you're doing. He didn't even bother with highness anymore. To him, I was just a washed-up royal. I started stripping the clothes off the corpse. You don't know a damn thing, I said. If you only solve crimes by looking for ID cards, you'll be a failure for the rest of your life. I disagree, Yu Dequan snapped. Solving a case is about confessions and physical evidence. The Ministry of Justice is the best in the business. Ignorance isn't the problem, Yu Dequan. It's being confident in your ignorance that's dangerous. I didn't even look up as I spoke. What did you say? He barked, but Zhang Kuei held him back. Tell us, Prince, Zhang Kuei asked, his voice mocking. What have you discovered from this piece of meat? Even Rian was leaning in, her eyes full of expectation. I looked at my lead guard. Take notes on everything I say. The guard looked panicked. Highness, I don't have paper or a pen. Just say it, Rian interrupted. I'll record it. She pulled a small wooden tablet from her sleeve and produced a tiny, elegant dagger. I glanced at the dagger, then at the identical one she'd used to kill the assassin earlier. I made a mental note to never truly piss her off. She was a walking armory. I cleared my throat and looked at the body. Subject is male. I began seriously. Yu Dequan and the other officials burst out laughing. Even Rian looked at me with a "are you kidding me" expression. My God, Yu Dequan wheezed, clutching his stomach. He's a male. Truly, the greatest mind in Great Wu. I'm in awe. I gave him a cold look. Age, approximately 20, I continued, ignoring the noise. Weight, roughly 120 pounds. Yu Dequan kept snickering. Oh, very impressive. What's next? Does he have 2 legs? I ignored him and kept my eyes on the cold skin of the man who had tried to end my life. The body never lies. You just have to know how to listen. I didn't stop. I kept speaking, my voice calm and steady. The deceased has a wound on the shoulder caused by a dagger. It's 5 centimeters deep. It didn't hit the bone. Zhang Kuei glanced at the wound and turned to Rian with a smirk. Sister Rian, your spiritual energy is as sharp as ever. Rian gave a small smile and quickly carved my words onto the wooden tablet. Zhang Kuei watched her, his eyes narrowing with impatience. Prince Wu Yuan, he said, his tone mocking. Can you tell us something we don't know? Even a child could see these things. Don't waste our time. I let out a cold laugh. Just listen carefully. I pointed to the victim's mouth. The throat is blackened. There are traces of poison in the mouth. It looks like a typical suicide by toxin. Zhang Kuei huffed, crossing his arms. The man died of poisoning. There's nothing to doubt. Can we go now? This time, I looked him dead in the eye. It wasn't the poison. The toxin is only stuck in his throat. It never reached his lungs or his gut. It was poured down his throat after he had already stopped breathing. The crowd went silent. I continued. If it had entered his organs, blood would have sprayed from his nose and ears. His face and lips would be a different shade of purple. Look at him. Only the throat is discolored. The officials from the Ministry of Justice froze. One of them stepped forward, nodding slowly. That's actually correct. Victims of that specific poison usually look exactly as the prince described. Yu Dequan whipped around and glared at the official. The man immediately lowered his head, terrified. But the seed was planted. Everyone there had seen a poisoned corpse before. They knew I was right. Rian looked at me, her eyes shimmering with curiosity. If it wasn't poison, then how did he die? The contempt in the air vanished. Everyone was leaning in now. I didn't keep them waiting. I reached down and flipped the body over. Look at the back of his head, I said. See this blood? This isn't from a fall. A man who can climb this high and attempt an assassination has incredible physical discipline. Look at his bone structure and the calluses on his arms. He's a professional. I gestured to his shoulder. Like I said, the dagger only hit his shoulder. It didn't touch the bone. An injury like that wouldn't make a master lose his balance and fall headfirst. This wound on the back of his skull was caused by a blunt object. That was the fatal blow. The guards looked at me like they were seeing a ghost. It was as if I had been standing there watching the murder happen. Surprised? I asked. It gets better. This man was murdered by someone else. And it happened in a very tight window of time. From the moment he fell to the moment the guards arrived, only 2 or 3 minutes passed. The killer didn't have time to run. Rian's eyes lit up. You mean, the killer is still here? Immediately, everyone started looking at the person next to them. Suspicion spread through the ranks like a virus. Yu Daquan snapped. This is nonsense. You're just guessing to cause trouble. I'm reporting this to the Emperor. He turned to his men. Take the body back to the ministry. Now, as the officials moved to grab the corpse, Rian's voice rang out like a whip. Surround them. I want to see who dares to move. My guards roared, drawing their blades and blocking the path. The ministry officials reached for their own swords, but hesitated. This was the palace. Drawing a weapon against a prince without a direct imperial order was considered treason. It meant the execution of your entire bloodline. Yu Daquan turned red with rage. What are you afraid of? The Ministry of Justice doesn't take orders from outsiders. Push through. But his men weren't stupid. Yu Daquan was the son of the minister. He might survive the fallout. They were just foot soldiers. They stayed put. I chuckled. Relax, brothers. As long as you stay still, I won't make things hard for you. Now, let's find the killer among your ranks. In the palace, everyone knows the rules. If the killer was a colleague, it made perfect sense why they were able to get close enough to silence the assassin. The tension was suffocating. Rian watched me, her heart clearly racing. It was as if the corpse itself was whispering its secrets into my ear. I decided it was time to end the show. Who was the second person to arrive at the scene? I asked loudly. A guard stepped forward. I was, Your Highness. Me and my partner here. We were on duty nearby and ran over together. I nodded. Good. Then tell me, who was the very first person you saw standing over this body? The guard blinked. Then he and his partner both turned their heads toward a man standing at the edge of the crowd. Before anyone could say a word, that man bolted. He didn't even try to argue. His flight was a confession. Rian let out a cry of triumph. Catch him. The guard scrambled, but Zhang Kuei was faster. Stay here, Sister Rian. I've got him. He blurred into motion, his speed so incredible it reminded me of a wuxia movie. I realized then that the martial arts in this world were the real deal. That wasn't great news for my long-term safety. While the chaos unfolded, I went back to the body. I didn't care about the chase. I cared about the evidence. The killer is being caught, Rian said, walking over to me. Why are you still looking at him? I pointed to the dead man's hand. Look at the webbing between his thumb and index finger. These calluses are thick. Is that from martial arts training? Rian leaned down, her eyes narrowing. She shook her head. No, that's not from training. That comes from years of gripping a specific type of blade. Years of gripping a blade, I repeated. A realization flashed in Rian's eyes. She opened her mouth to speak, but I caught her gaze and gave a tiny, sharp shake of my head. She was smart. She shut her mouth instantly, but the way she looked at me changed. There was a new level of respect there, and maybe a bit of fear. She was probably wondering the same thing everyone else was. Was I really the same useless, playboy prince they all knew? A man who could write world-class poetry was one thing. But a man who could make the dead speak? That was something else entirely. I wasn't just guessing. This wasn't some surface-level theory I'd picked up from a book. I knew exactly what those calluses meant. Rian opened her mouth to speak, but the sound of a loud commotion cut her off. The guards were back, and they had the assassin. I glanced at Zhang Kuei. Honestly, when I saw him sprint off earlier, I thought he was a goner. To me, the guy was a snake, but I had to admit he was effective. Yu Daquan, the official in charge, looked like he was about to have a heart attack. He tried to hide his panic, but his eyes were darting everywhere. Any idiot could see he was terrified. Zhang Kuei tossed the killer onto the dirt. Mission accomplished, he grunted. He's alive. See what you can get out of him. Rian looked at me, expecting me to take the lead. I was the one who had exposed the man, after all. But I did the last thing anyone expected. I shook my head and stepped back. This is a matter for the Ministry of Justice, I said, my voice flat. Now that we have a live witness, I'm sure they'll do their jobs. Everyone stared at me in disbelief. A few minutes ago, I was fighting tooth and nail to inspect a cold corpse. Now, with the killer right in front of me, I was acting like I couldn't care less. Rian looked especially baffled. She knew I had a lead on the mastermind. Why was I throwing away the chance to nail them? I didn't explain. I just walked up to the assassin and whispered a few words. The man's eyes, previously filled with spite, suddenly turned white with fear. He opened his mouth to scream, but Yu Daquan cut him off, shouting for the guards to take him away. Yu Daquan wiped a thick layer of sweat from his forehead. The arrogance he had earlier was gone. He looked like he just wanted to escape before I changed my mind. I'll get to the bottom of this, Your Highness, he stammered, then practically ran out of the courtyard. Zhang Kuei watched them go, looking thoughtful, but he didn't say anything about the case. Instead, he turned back to us with a fake, heroic smile. Princess Rian, I hope you weren't too frightened by all this. I stepped between them. I don't care how close you two think you are, I said. This is the palace. There are rules. Learn them. Zhang Kuei's eyes flared like a volcano about to erupt, but he managed to choke back his rage. He bowed stiffly. Yes, Your Highness. Then he turned to Rian. Please forgive my rudeness, Sister Rian. Usually, Rian would have snapped at me for talking to her brother like that. But today, she stayed silent. She just gave him a small nod. It's fine. We should be more careful in public. Zhang Kuei looked like he'd been slapped. He knew Rian didn't care about me or my title, yet here she was, following my lead. I gave him a smug grin and grabbed Rian's arm. Come on, Rian. Let's go home. Rian had 1,000 questions for me, so she didn't resist. But as we turned to leave, Zhang Kuei got desperate. Wait, Sister Rian, you mentioned you wanted to hear those poems I wrote. I have them ready for your critique. Rian had clearly forgotten all about it. She wasn't in the mood for poetry, especially not after seeing what I could do earlier. She tried to let him down easy. I'm a bit tired today. Maybe another time. I saw my chance to finish him. Why wait? I chimed in. There's no time like the present. Let's head to the garden. I'd love to hear some poetry. Rian tried to stop me, but it was too late. Zhang Kuei wasn't about to back down either. He wanted to prove he was better than me, especially in front of Rian. We settled into the back garden of the Eastern Palace. Rian was clearly annoyed, so she started taking it out on the staff. She called over 4 of my maids, the ones I called my little cuties. She was being difficult, making one of them pick every single seed out of a dragon fruit because she didn't like the texture. The poor girls were trembling, looking at me with big, teary eyes. It broke my heart. I knew I had to play the long game to win Rian over, but seeing my maids bullied because of this guy made my blood boil. I turned to Zhang Kuei. Stop stalling like a little girl, I snapped. Let's hear this masterpiece of yours. Zhang Kuei narrowed his eyes. He thought he had this in the bag. He took a deep breath and began to recite. The poem was about the beauty of the mountains, the scent of spring flowers, and swallows flying over the sand. It was okay. He'd clearly paid a professional to polish it for him. He finished with a flourish, looking incredibly proud of himself. Rian even gave him a small smile. Not bad, brother. You've definitely improved. Zhang Kuei beamed, his ego inflating by the second. My maids, who didn't know about my performance at the banquet earlier, looked terrified for me. They knew I was usually useless at this stuff. They were probably wondering why I was picking a fight I couldn't win. I let the silence hang for a moment, then I burst out laughing. That's it, I asked, wiping a tear from my eye. I actually had high expectations, but that's just a nursery rhyme. A 7-year-old could have written that. I looked him dead in the eye. If you actually showed that to Princess Shangwan, she'd laugh you out of the country. You want to be a top scholar with that trash? You're an embarrassment. My maids couldn't help it. They let out a collective burst of giggles, and for the first time all day, the smug look on Zhang Kuei's face completely vanished. My maids looked at me with wide eyes, their mouths hanging open. They were probably thinking the same thing. Since when did their master become so sharp-tongued? I'd basically told the man he was an international embarrassment. It was brutal. Before the girls could celebrate, Ruyan shot them a warning glare that silenced them instantly. Zhang Kuei, meanwhile, finally snapped out of his shock. He wasn't even angry yet. He just thought I was bluffing. He'd heard rumors about me holding my own against the Great Yu delegation, but in his mind, if a useless prince like me could beat them, they must have been hacks. He actually felt regret that he, the rising star, hadn't been there to take the credit himself. He gave me a fake, thin smile. Since your highness is so confident, please enlighten us. Let's hear your masterpiece. Rian looked interested too. The way I'd handled Shangwan Jianjia still felt like a dream to her. She wanted to see if I actually had real talent or if I was just a one-hit wonder. Internally, I was grinning. I sent a quick silent prayer to the legendary poets of ancient Earth. Thank you, ancestors, for giving me this moment to shine. Listen closely, I said, leaning back. I'll show you what real poetry sounds like. Zhang Kuei smirked, waiting for me to trip over my words so he could tear me apart. My maids gripped their dresses, looking terrified for me. Then, I began to recite. Spring sleep arrives, unaware of the dawn. Everywhere, I hear the singing of birds. After the wind and rain of the night, who knows how many flowers have fallen? The courtyard went silent. The maids stared at me, stunned. Even if they didn't understand the nuances of literature, they could feel the soul in those words. It touched something deep inside them. Rian wasn't doing much better. One of the maids was so shocked she had accidentally grabbed Rian's arm, and Rian didn't even notice. She had assumed I'd used every bit of my strength to fight off the Great Yu princess. But hearing this, she realized I hadn't even been trying back then. How could a man change so much overnight? Every word I spoke felt like it belonged in a history book. It was as if a god of literature had descended into my body. She shook her head, looking at Zhang Kuei with pure pity. The man's face was twitching. I patted Zhang Kuei on the shoulder. What? Shocked already? I'm just getting started. Keep listening. I didn't give him a chance to breathe. The bright moonlight shines before my bed, appearing like frost upon the ground. I kept going. From 1,000 mountains, the birds' flights are gone. On 10,000 paths, the human tracks are erased. I rattled off 5 or 6 of the greatest poems ever written in human history, one after another. Thump! Zhang Kuei hit the deck. He was on his knees, his face ghostly white. The sheer weight of the genius he was witnessing was too much for his ego to handle. He clutched his chest, and a second later, he actually coughed up a spray of blood. No. Impossible. This isn't real. He wheezed, looking at Rian. Rian, tell me this is a nightmare. Meanwhile, inside the Golden Dragon Palace, the Emperor was staring at a piece of parchment with disbelief. He read the lines aloud, his voice trembling with excitement. The bright moonlight shines before my bed. Good. This is incredible. He slammed his hand on the desk. From 1,000 mountains, the birds' flights are gone. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. He read the next one and froze, paralyzed by the beauty of the prose. After a long silence, he began pacing the room, his face flushed with pride. Eunuch Su, the Emperor called out. Tell me the truth. Did Your Honor really write these? Eunuch Su smiled, bowed low. Your Majesty, these came straight from the Eastern Palace Gardens. Every word came from Prince Wu Yuan's mouth. Good, good, good. The Emperor laughed. It seems I've underestimated that boy. Who knew he had such a gift? He paused, remembering something. The results for the imperial examinations, who was named the top scholar this year. Eunuch Su, who had served the Emperor for decades, knew exactly where this was going. Your Majesty, the top scholar is Zhang Kuei. His essay was decent, though a bit arrogant. The Emperor waved a hand dismissively. This year's top honors belong to Wu Yuan. Issue the decree. Eunuch Su gasped. He knew Zhang Kuei had ruined his chances with his behavior today, but he didn't expect the Emperor to give the title to someone who hadn't even sat for the exam. Your Majesty, this might cause a public outcry. The prince didn't participate in the tests. The Emperor's expression darkened. Spread these poems across the city. If anyone is unhappy, tell them to write something better. If they can't, they can shut up. Your Majesty is wise, Su replied quickly. Once these are public, no one will dare challenge him. It's time the other nations saw the brilliance of our great Wu princes. The Emperor beamed. What's the boy doing now? Eunuch Su hesitated, looking awkward. Well, after Zhang Kuei left in a state of collapse, Prince Wu Yuan, he what? Speak up. He retreated to his bedchamber with his 4 maids, Your Majesty. He hasn't come out since. The emperor slammed his desk again, though this time it was in frustration. That brat. It's broad daylight. How can he be so shameless? Eunuch Su let out a soft chuckle. Please calm yourself, Majesty. The prince is young. He may be a bit of a rogue, but perhaps it's that very wild spirit that allows him to produce such genius. The emperor huffed. You're always making excuses for him. Go. Bring him to me. Back in the Eastern Palace, I was currently enjoying the attentive care of my 4 maids. After the stress of the day, I figured I deserved a little relaxation. I was busy comforting the girls after Rian had been so hard on them, and we were having a great time. Suddenly, the door was kicked open with a violent bang. I didn't even have to look to know it was Rian. All of you get out, she barked. The 4 maids didn't wait for a second invitation. They scrambled for their clothes and bolted out the door. I felt a bit guilty, pulling the blanket up to my chin. Oh, Rian, you're back, I said weakly. Is your brother Zhang Kuei okay? Rian had personally escorted him out because he looked like he was about to have a mental breakdown. My comment only made her angrier. I know you're talented, she snapped, walking toward the bed. But did you have to crush him like that? 1 poem would have been enough. You recited 8. You've destroyed his spirit. He left crying like his soul had been ripped out. He deserved it, I countered. He came here to show off in front of me and kept looking at you with those greedy eyes. I was doing you a favor by not breaking his legs. Rian froze. How can you say that? He's my sworn brother. Do you think everyone is as obsessed with women as you are? Seeing her defend that guy made something snap inside me. I could handle a lot of things, but I wasn't going to let my woman have another man in her heart. As she reached the edge of the bed, I moved. I lunged forward and grabbed her arm, pulling her down. She let out a sharp gasp, and before she could react, I had her pinned beneath me on the mattress. She opened her mouth to protest, but I didn't give her the chance. I kissed her hard. For a second, she was frozen in shock. It was clearly her first time experiencing anything like this. But as soon as she realized I was trying to take things further, her martial instincts kicked in. The next thing I knew, the positions were reversed. I was the one pinned down, unable to move a muscle. I knew she was a fighter, but I hadn't realized she was this strong. You dare disrespect me? Rian's face was as red as a ripe tomato. She looked part furious, part embarrassed, and honestly, kind of adorable. I didn't do anything. I lied through my teeth. You're still lying? I'll kill you. I scrambled back, heart racing as Rian's eyes flared with genuine murderous intent. She was actually going to do it. She was going to kill me. Just as she raised her hand, a maid's voice drifted in from outside the doors. Your Highness? Eunuch Su is here. He brings an imperial decree from His Majesty. You are summoned to the palace immediately. I felt like I'd just been handed a lifeline. My savior had arrived. But I couldn't help myself. As Rian froze, distracted by the interruption, I lunged forward one last time. I pecked her right on those beautiful, pouting lips. Before she could process the shock or grab her sword, I spun around and bolted out the door. I could practically hear her teeth grinding in rage behind me. She was furious, but she couldn't do a thing about it now. Once the room fell silent, she touched her lips, her expression softening into something she probably didn't want to admit was a smile. A short while later, I stood inside the Golden Dragon Hall. My father, the Emperor, sat on his throne, looking weary. Father, you sent for me? I asked, keeping my tone casual. The Emperor looked up, surprised by my relaxed demeanor. A flash of irritation crossed his face. What? Can I not see my own son unless there's a crisis? Or do you feel I've interrupted your festivities? I cleared my throat. I knew he probably had spies in the Eastern Palace. He knew exactly what I'd been up to with my maids. I am always ready to share my father's burdens, I said, putting on my most serious face. The old man's expression softened. My words had hit the mark. You performed well today, he admitted. You exceeded my expectations. By all rights, restoring your title as Crown Prince would be appropriate. However, I haven't done that yet. Do you resent me for it? I knew this was a test of loyalty. I stood tall and spoke with conviction. I have no resentment. I know I was immature in the past. But from this day forward, I will lead by example. I will be the first to worry about the nation's troubles and the last to enjoy its rewards. I don't crave the title. I only want the Great Wu Empire to be strong and its people to be at peace. The emperor stared at me, stunned. Even eunuch Su, standing by his side, looked at me with newfound respect. "You honor," the emperor whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "I didn't realize you possessed such a regal heart. I am truly comforted." He sighed deeply, his pride quickly replaced by a shadow of worry. "But I fear my joy is short-lived. Great Yu is coming at us with everything they have. I'm afraid that in 3 days, during the contest, our Great Wu will fall." My brow furrowed. "Why would you say that, father?" "Tell me," he said, his eyes narrowing. "Did you see any sincerity in the Great Yu delegation? Any real desire for peace?" I thought back to the banquet. None. If they wanted peace, they wouldn't have been so difficult. They certainly wouldn't have doubled down on a new wager after losing the first round. The emperor nodded. "Exactly. And I have intelligence, though not fully confirmed. It's likely true that Great Yu has been in secret contact with the kingdom of Tianli." My heart skipped a beat. This was bad. The only reason Great Yu and Great Wu were even talking was because the kingdom of Tianli was a massive, looming threat to us both. If Great Yu was siding with the enemy, we were surrounded. "Father, they want to team up and swallow us whole," I realized aloud. "It's worse than that," the emperor sighed. "If we lose the contest in 3 days, we lose 3 border cities. And you? You will be taken as a hostage. We will lose our land, our morale, and our future. Great Wu will be." He couldn't even finish the sentence. I took a deep breath. I didn't have much of an emotional connection to this empire yet, but I knew one thing. As long as Great Wu stood, I was a prince. If it fell, I was a dead man or a slave. "Don't worry, father," I said, my voice steady. "I'll make sure Great Yu learns what it means to lose both the bait and the hook." The emperor looked at me, revitalized by my confidence. "You honor, you are full of surprises. Su, bring me the Qilin folding fan." Eunuch Su looked startled, but hurried to fetch a beautiful, ornate fan. "I am giving this to you," the emperor said, handing it to me. "It represents my personal presence. Do not fail me. Go and win that Great Yu princess as your concubine." I was stunned. I didn't expect the old man to have such a competitive, almost roguish side. But more importantly, this fan was a massive power-up. Even without the official title of Crown Prince, with this in my hand, no one would dare touch me. As I turned to leave, the emperor added one more thing. "The assassin you caught has confessed. I've handled it. It's a chaotic time, so don't worry about the details for now. Focus entirely on the delegation." I nodded quickly. I had expected this. I hadn't let Rian push for answers earlier because I knew the conspiracy went deep. If we started a civil war now over who sent the killer, the enemies at our gates would just walk right in. The fan was my compensation for staying quiet. I'd settle the score with the traitors later. "I understand. What exactly are the events in 3 days?" I asked. "One contest of wit, and one of martial skill," he replied calmly. "Wait, martial skill?" I froze. "A fight?" The emperor gave me a suspicious look. "What? Are you afraid? Great Wu was founded on military might. We fear no one." I broke into a cold sweat, but forced a smile. "I just meant, they're seeking death if they want to fight us." "Perhaps," the emperor mused. "But if they are truly working with Tianli, I fear they might have a champion from that kingdom hidden in their ranks." I walked out of the hall with my head spinning. Later that afternoon, I was back in the Eastern Palace courtyard, being slammed into the dirt for the 10th time. Rian didn't hold back. My 8 maids stood in a circle, watching with wide, worried eyes, wondering why their master was suddenly so obsessed with being beaten up by his wife. I groaned, my bones aching, but I pushed myself up. Again. Rian sighed, dropping her stance. "No, I'm done. This is boring. You can't even fight back. You aren't built for this, and 3 days of cramming won't change that." The maids rushed over to check on me. One of them, a bold girl named Guyu, whispered, "Your Highness, if you want excitement, I have a new idea that will make you feel much better." I felt a sudden chill and glanced at Rian. She was radiating killing intent again. "Keep your idea for later," I told the maid quickly. "I'll appreciate it after I beat the delegation." I turned back to my wife. "Rian, who taught you to fight like this?" Who was your master? Master Juri, she replied simply. Juri? Never heard of him. Is he famous? Rian looked at me like I was an idiot. If the emperor heard you say that, you'd be executed. Master Juri is the imperial tutor. He was the emperor's own teacher. I nearly tripped over my own feet. Then how did you end up as his disciple? She crossed her arms, looking annoyed. It seems my husband knows absolutely nothing about his own wife. My father earned a great merit, and as a reward, the emperor allowed me to study under the master. I looked at her, truly seeing her for the first time. I was married to a woman who was basically a lethal weapon trained by a legend. I smiled, despite the bruises. If I couldn't learn to fight like her in 3 days, I was going to have to find another way to win. I thought about what Ruyan said and let out a long breath. It made sense. I didn't need to overthink it. Is this Master Juri really that powerful? I asked, feeling a spark of hope. Ruyan shot me a sharp look. What do you think? I couldn't help myself. I leaned in and whispered, Ruyan, you're so beautiful. Even when you're angry, you're stunning. Her cheeks flushed a deep red. She opened her mouth to snap back, but I didn't give her the chance. I grabbed her hand and pulled her up. Someone, get my horse ready. Ruyan was dazed as I dragged her along. It wasn't until we were galloping down the road that she finally snapped out of it. Are you making me take you to see Master Juri? She shouted over the wind. My clever wife, I teased. She was fuming. Then why couldn't you get 2 horses? Why are we sharing one? And stop holding my waist. I could tell she was close to tears. It was one thing for me to force a kiss on her earlier, but now I was blatantly taking advantage of her. Her waist was incredibly sensitive. She wanted to fight back, but she felt weak, so she had to endure it in silence. I could almost hear her internal scream. Why didn't I run away from this useless prince? We arrived soon enough. Ruyan watched with a satisfied smirk as I was immediately blocked at the gates. I am the crown prince. I barked at the 2 guards. How dare you stop me? Without His Majesty's decree, no one enters the imperial tutor's estate, one guard replied. His eyes were like lightning, completely unimpressed by my title. I knew the imperial tutor had the status to back this up, but who did these guards think they were? Realizing talk was useless, I stepped forward and slapped the guard right across the face. For a martial artist, it probably didn't hurt much, but the insult was massive. Ruyan gasped. What are you doing? You can't hit the master's people. She grabbed me and pulled me back, likely trying to save me from a counterattack. The guard was livid. He looked ready to kill. I just sneered at him. If you have the guts, try it. The 2 guards stared at the folding fan in my hand. Their pupils shrank. A second later, they both dropped to their knees. Move, I growled. They scrambled aside, heads bowed, not daring to look up. Ruyan stared at my fan in shock. How do you have the Emperor's Qilin fan? I gave her a wicked grin. Kiss me, and I'll tell you. She huffed and marched inside ahead of me. I followed, feeling much more confident. The Qilin fan was a powerful tool. An hour later, in the estate of the second prince, Wu Zheng, my younger brother Wu Yun came sprinting in like his hair was on fire. Brother, something terrible has happened. Wu Zheng remained calm. He took a slow sip of tea. Fourth brother, we are sons of the same mother. Even if the sky falls, I'm here for you. Don't panic. Drink some tea, then speak. Wu Yun opened his mouth, saw Wu Zheng's stern look, and gulped down the tea. Brother, this tea is great. Of course it is, Wu Zheng smiled. Now tell me. The smile vanished instantly with Wu Yun's next words. I just got word. Wu Yuan, that useless trash, has kidnapped Master Juri and his granddaughter. Wu Yun went back to his tea, but Wu Zheng roared. Why didn't you say so sooner? How can you sit there drinking tea? Where did he take them? Wu Yun looked aggrieved. You told me to drink the tea. They're at the Eastern Palace. Gather the men. Wu Zheng shouted. We're going to the Eastern Palace to get them back. He was spiraling. Wu Yuan had already stolen the spotlight by pushing back the Great Yu delegation. Now he was trying to win over the imperial tutor to reclaim the throne. Wu Zheng had spent years suckering up to the old master. He couldn't let his prize be stolen. Meanwhile, in the Golden Dragon Palace, the emperor stared at Manager Su in disbelief. Wu Yuan actually kidnapped Master Juri. Manager Su wiped cold sweat from his brow. Yes, your majesty. They are at the Eastern Palace. The second prince is already on his way with troops to stage a rescue. The emperor rubbed his temples. What was Wu Yuan thinking? The master was old. He couldn't handle this kind of chaos. Your Majesty, Manager Su whispered. We must stop them. Don't forget, you gave Wu Yuan the Qilin fan. That gives him the power to execute first and report later. The emperor's face went pale. Ridiculous. Come on, to the Eastern Palace. Outside my gates, things were heating up. Wu Zheng and Wu Yun had the palace surrounded. Tell Wu Yuan to come out. How dare he disrespect the master? I'll take him to father myself. I finally walked out, bored by the noise. Stop yelling. If you want to play the dutiful grandson, go do it somewhere else. I don't have time for you. Wu Zheng was shaking with rage. Wu Yuan, you have a lot of nerve. You. I waved him off dismissively. Oh, shut up. I kidnapped them. If you have a problem, keep it to yourself. Say one more word, and I'll slap you. My guards looked at me with newfound respect. They had watched me get bullied by the second prince for years. This was the first time they had seen me stand my ground like a real prince. You arrogant fool. Wu Zheng screamed. If I don't take you down today, I'll fail my father and the master's teachings. He drew his sword. The ringing of the steel made my skin crawl. I'd seen enough action movies to know a real expert when I saw one. Wu Zheng was dangerous. But I didn't move. I stood there, calm and indifferent, looking like a grandmaster who didn't fear death. The guards watched in awe as Wu Zheng charged. Then, I pulled out my fan. The guards hit the floor instantly, bowing low. Wu Zheng's sword stopped 3 inches from my head. He froze, shaking his head like he'd seen a ghost. Impossible. Why do you have father's Qilin fan? Take a guess, I said. Behind the door, I heard Rian groan. I knew it was a frustrating answer. I know, Wu Zheng shouted. You stole it. You've lost your mind. Are you brain dead? I asked. I usually try not to insult people, but I couldn't help it. Wu Zheng's eyes turned dark. He knew no one could steal that fan, but he wanted to be confused. If he killed me now, he could claim I kidnapped the tutor and stole the fan. With his connections, he could probably get away with it. I felt a sudden, icy wave of killing intent. My heart hammered against my ribs. Wu Yuan, you've committed a capital crime. Wu Zheng hissed, his eyes full of murder. Surrender now, or don't blame me for being ruthless. I realized then, this lunatic was actually going to try to kill me. Stop right now. The roar echoed through the courtyard just as the blade was about to bite into my neck. At the very last second, my father, Emperor Wu, arrived. I stared at the sword hovering inches above my head. For a heartbeat, I felt the cold breath of death. I realized then that being the eldest prince meant nothing if I wasn't careful. One wrong move in this palace and I'd be a corpse. Wu Zheng hadn't been bluffing. He really intended to kill me. Strangely, I didn't feel afraid. Instead, a cold resolve settled in my chest. If I didn't secure the position of crown prince and grab real power, my life would always be hanging by a thread. Father, you've come at the right time. Wu Zheng shouted, acting first to frame me. He didn't mention his murder attempt at all. Wu Yuan is out of control. He insulted Master Juri and stole your Qilin fan. I was just about to bring him to you for judgment. But the emperor wasn't someone you could easily fool. He barked a single word. Kneel. Father. Wu Zheng tried to argue, but one look from the emperor sent him crashing to his knees. I gave the Qilin fan to Wu Yuan myself. The emperor said, his voice like ice. How did you decide it was stolen? And even if it were, what right do you have to raise a sword against your elder brother? Will you point that blade at me next? Wu Zheng turned pale and started banging his head on the ground. Father, I would never. I was just so worried about Master Juri that I lost my head. I'll accept any punishment. I had to hand it to him. He was quick. He used the master as a shield the moment things went south. The emperor's expression softened slightly at the mention of his old teacher. Then he turned to me. Do you have an explanation for this? I took a deep breath, burning the image of Wu Zheng's face into my memory. I wouldn't forget today. Father, I only wanted to ask the master for guidance for the upcoming duel in 3 days. But the Master Juri, refused to speak to me. I got desperate and made a clumsy move. Behind me, I heard Ruyan roll her eyes. She knew clumsy was an understatement. I had burst in with the fan and demanded the master transfer all his internal power to me, telling him his decades of cultivation would be a waste otherwise. When he ignored me, I'd kidnapped him and his granddaughter, even buying them new clothes to make it look like a gift. Fortunately, the emperor didn't dig deeper. He saw it as a son trying too hard for the sake of the kingdom. Your heart is in the right place, but don't be disrespectful. If you want his help, use etiquette and sincerity. If he still refuses, then it's simply not meant to be. Send him back before evening. I beamed. This meant I still had a few hours. Meanwhile, Wu Zheng was ordered back to his estate to reflect in isolation for 3 days. Seeing his furious, trembling face made my day. Once everyone cleared out, I went to find the hostages. Looking at the scrawny, dried-up old man, I still had a hard time believing he was the legendary Master Juri. If Rian hadn't confirmed it, I'd think I grabbed the wrong guy. His granddaughter, Xiao Er, was a different story. She was bright-eyed and looked full of mischief. "Old man, my father is gone. You can relax and stay here," I said bluntly. The old man sat like a statue, ignoring me. I didn't have time for games. I reached out and grabbed his long goatee. "Hey, I'm talking to you." Rian gasped. This man wasn't just a master. He was her teacher. "Let go. Show him some respect," she hissed, leaning in to whisper. "If you provoke him, he can kill you with one finger." I nodded seriously. "I believe you, but I don't think he'll do it. Right, old man?" Suddenly, the girl, Xiao Er, burst out laughing. "Brother Wu Yuan, you're so funny. Why didn't I meet you sooner? I've never seen anyone treat my grandfather like this." I grinned at her. "You're not bad yourself. A real filial granddaughter." We both started laughing, feeling like kindred spirits. The old man, who had planned to give me the silent treatment, couldn't take it anymore. "Xiao Er, stop this nonsense. We're leaving right now." "No," Xiao Er pouted. "I'm not going. You go if you want," but I finally got out of the house. I knew she was a handful the moment she excitedly followed me earlier. She was my secret weapon to keep the old man here. "Xiao Er, since you called me brother, I'm going to spoil you. I'll give you something amazing later." "Really? I can't wait," she cheered. I turned back to the old man, who was fuming. Even the emperor called him master, but I was calling him old man, like he was a neighbor. He wanted to leave, but he couldn't leave his granddaughter behind. Finally, he sighed in defeat. "Fine. Prince Wu Yuan, what exactly do you want from me?" I leaned in with a greasy smile. "You're a grandmaster, right? Don't be stingy. Transfer your internal power to me. Make me an unstoppable expert so I can crush the Great U delegation. It'll be a huge credit to your name." Rian put her face in her hands. The old man's beard practically vibrated with rage. "What internal power? I have no idea what you're talking about." "You don't." I was genuinely worried now. Had I watched too many movies? If there's no internal power, how is Rian stronger than most men? How can you shatter rocks? "That is Qi," the old man, Rian, and Xiao Er all said at the same time. "What?" The old man turned his head away. "Let Rian explain it to you. I have nothing more to say." Rian tried to bolt, but I was faster. I caught her by the waist. I'd already figured out that was her weak spot. "Let's go talk in the bedroom," I said. Before she could protest, I swept her up into my arms and carried her off. Inside the room, Rian's face was beet red. She clutched her dress, glaring at me with eyes that could kill. She was furious that she'd let me take advantage of her, but for some reason, she couldn't bring herself to actually hurt me anymore. "What are you looking at?" she snapped, looking more adorable than threatening. "Try that again, and I'll turn you into a literal hostage." I just stared at her and smiled. I was starting to realize how lucky I was. This wife of mine was perfect from every angle. And the best part? Even when she was angry, she didn't actually want me dead. "If you don't have anything to say, I'm leaving," she muttered, clearly unable to handle the way I was looking at her. My intense gaze made Rian look away. She clearly wanted to escape the room, but I wasn't finished. I had to know about this mysterious power they mentioned. "That Qi you all were talking about, what exactly is it?" I asked, flashing a smile. I wasn't about to let this go. I didn't expect to become a grandmaster overnight, but I needed to understand the rules of this world. Rian knew I wouldn't stop prying. She didn't play hard to get this time. She took a breath and started explaining. "Qi is a fundamental concept in martial arts. Every living body hides a certain kind of energy, but it takes constant training and a specific kind of talent to unlock it." She described it as the source of a warrior's strength. If you channel Qi into your palm when you punch, the force increases several times over. The power depends entirely on the quality of the chi inside you. It worked for everything, throwing hidden blades, swinging swords, or even just moving faster. I nodded along. It wasn't hard to grasp. It sounded a lot like the internal energy from the old wuxia movies I used to watch. Then, I asked the question I cared about most. Can this chi be transferred to someone else? Rian looked at me like I was an idiot. What kind of daydream are you having? If that were possible, why would anyone bother training hard from childhood? Everyone would just wait for a master to hand over their power and call it a day. Seeing her disdainful look, my heart sank. All that excitement for nothing. What kind of garbage system is this? It's completely unscientific, I complained. Rian had no idea what unscientific meant, but she could tell I was annoyed. I got out of bed, shaking my head and muttering to myself. Without chi, I'd never be a top-tier fighter. Going into a martial contest against great, you would be suicide. I couldn't just rely on petty tricks like I did with Wu Zhang. This was a national-level struggle involving the Tianli Kingdom. The opponents wouldn't be easy targets. There has to be a way, I whispered. Maybe that old man knows a trick. He's the imperial tutor, after all. I left the room and headed to the kitchen. A while later, I walked into the courtyard carrying 2 cups. Under the pavilion, the old man and Rian were chatting happily. The young girl, Xiao Er, was bored, fiddling with some strange gadgets. Rian, I was looking for you, I said as I approached. Rian looked up. I was looking for you too. Well, Xiao Er was. Where did you go? Before I could answer, Xiao Er jumped up. Liar. Big fat liar. She looked adorable when she was angry. I couldn't help myself. I reached out and pinched her cheek. It was soft, like fresh tofu. I wanted to do it again, but she snapped. Liar. You said you had a gift for me. I'm never believing you again. The old man finally saw his chance to take me down a peg. I told you not to listen to his sweet talk, he said smugly. Now, will you come back with me? Xiao Er's big, misty eyes filled with tears, but she stubbornly held them back. Fine. Let's go. Right now. The old man was overjoyed. He didn't want to stay here another second. Good girl. Let's go. He started walking toward the gate, but after a few steps, he realized Xiao Er hadn't moved. He turned around and saw her holding a cup, sniffing it with a look of pure intoxication. This is the gift I prepared for you, I said. It's called pearl milk tea. I handed the other cup to Rian. Rian froze. This was the first time I'd ever given her a gift. The fragrance was unlike anything she'd ever smelled. She looked at me, confused, and I gave her a quick wink. Yours has more pearls than hers, I whispered. Pearls. That's so expensive, Rian murmured. She moved her spoon and found small, translucent, bouncy black spheres. They looked like pearls, but the texture was all wrong. Can you actually eat these? Before she could finish the sentence, Xiao Er let out a loud gasp. These pearls are amazing. Rian was stunned. She knew Xiao Er was a wild, eccentric girl, so she decided to take a leap of faith. She took a spoonful. It was sweet, fragrant, and smooth. It had the bitterness of tea, the richness of milk, and the chewy texture of the pearls. It was a flavor explosion. She fell in love with it instantly. I watched them both looking blissfully happy and smirked. Pearl milk tea was simple to make, but effective. It didn't matter what era you were in, women couldn't resist this stuff. Brother Wu Yuan, where did this come from? I want more. Xiao Er was completely won over. I invented it myself, I said, leaning into the moment. Only I know the recipe. But like I said, if you call me brother, I'll spoil you. I'll make you more tomorrow. You made this yourself? Really? Xiao Er was wide-eyed. Even Rian looked at me with disbelief. Absurd, the old man suddenly barked. A gentleman stays away from the kitchen. You are the eldest prince. How can you degrade yourself with such lowly work? Rian and Xiao Er both stiffened. They had been raised with these traditional ideas. To them, a man of high status entering a kitchen was indeed seen as beneath his dignity. So, stepping into a kitchen makes me less of a gentleman? I challenged. I don't care about being a gentleman. I believe a real man does what needs to be done. Cooking for my cute sister and my beautiful wife isn't shameful. It's an honor. Both Rian and Xiao Er felt a slight tremor in their hearts. They had never heard anyone speak like that. It hit them right in the soul. But I wasn't done yet. I turned to the old man. Hey, old man. Come here. I've got a few things to say to you. He looked at me, confused. I stared him right in the eye. Listen closely. In my world, men and women are equals. Women aren't just tools for bearing children. My great Wu should be a land that embraces everyone. This talk about women being inferior to men is pure garbage. If you give them the chance, they can do many things better than men. The shock in the courtyard was palpable. The old man's beard practically flew up in rage. Ridiculous. The empire was won by men. Without men, women wouldn't have a stable life. I let out a cold laugh. Without women, men would have starved to death long ago. As for the empire, maybe men have a natural advantage in raw strength, but look at my Rian. She could take down 10 of your best generals alone. Is she inferior? The old man was speechless. He didn't dare insult Rian's skill, but he was turning red from the frustration of the argument. He opened his mouth to shout back, but Xiao Er cut him off. Enough, Grandpa, she snapped. Since you love men so much, don't come looking for me anymore. Go back by yourself. The old man froze. He realized too late that it wasn't just Xiao Er who was upset. Even Rian, who was always respectful, was looking at him with cold indifference. Even the 8 palace maids nearby were rolling their eyes at him. The great imperial tutor took a stumbling step back. He was being despised by everyone. He realized that Xiao Er was all he had left in this world. Xiao Er, Grandpa was wrong. He stammered, looking desperate. I didn't mean I looked down on women. Really? Xiao Er turned her head away. Yes, you did. I'm not talking to you. The old man looked like he was about to cry. Realizing he couldn't fix this on his own, he turned to me with a pleading look. Inside, I was laughing my head off. I finally had him right where I wanted him. The old man finally saw the writing on the wall. He looked defeated, realizing that Xiao Er really didn't believe him. I leaned down toward her, my voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Don't listen to him, Xiao Er. Tonight, I'll make you something delicious. Her eyes lit up instantly. Something delicious? Can I have more pearl milk tea? I shook my head, smiling. Not tonight. That milk tea is hard to make. I knew the secret to keeping people hooked. If things are too easy to get, they lose their value. But don't worry. Tonight, I'm making fried chicken. It'll be so good you'll practically swallow your tongue. Xiao Er was the old man's weakness. If I wanted to control him, I had to win her over completely. The mention of fried chicken worked like a charm. Xiao Er looked like she wanted the sun to set immediately. She gave her grandfather a reluctant nod, signaling she'd forgiven him, for now. I caught Xian Rian's eye and gave her a subtle look, motioning for her to take the girl away. Normally, Xian Rian wouldn't play along with my schemes. But today was different. She nodded without hesitation. My speech about women's worth had clearly shaken her heart. Let's eat together tonight, she said softly as she led Xiao Er past me. The 8 palace maids nearby gasped. Their eyes wide, they looked at us like they'd just witnessed a miracle. It was unheard of. Xian Rian had never offered to share a meal with me before, let alone initiated it. I didn't let it go to my head, though. I just gave her a quick, confident nod. Once they were gone, I turned to the maids. You all head out too. Go clean up the kitchen. Especially that pot. Make sure it's spotless. The girls froze for a second, then saw me wink. They realized what I meant. Their faces lit up with excitement. I wasn't going to leave them out. There was plenty of milk tea left in that pot for them. They scurried off, giggling and happy. It was a pleasant sight. Prince Wu Yuan, stop staring, the old man grumbled. Do you have something to say to me or not? I pulled my gaze back and poured him a cup of regular tea. He glanced longingly at the empty cup Xiao Er had used for her milk tea and let out a huff. I ignored him. If he wanted the good stuff, he had to earn it. Old man, I just saved your skin, I said. Why the long face? Humph. If it wasn't for your nonsense theories, Xiao Er wouldn't be mad at me in the first place. Don't blame me for the truth, I countered. The fact that they're angry proves you're wrong. But I'm not here to argue politics. One day, I'll show you a world where women hold up half the sky. He scoffed, clearly done with the topic. Enough talk. I'll ask you one more time. Do you really believe a martial artist's chi can be transferred to another person? I watched his expression closely. I've never heard of such a thing, he said firmly. He wasn't lying. I smiled. Just because you haven't heard of it doesn't mean it's impossible. Let's try it right now. Don't be a fool. He snapped, his voice rising in genuine anger. Do you want to die? His reaction made me hesitate. Was it really that dangerous? But I knew the stakes. If I didn't take this risk, I'd never win the upcoming contest. I have to try, I said, my voice steady. I won't give up until I do. When he still refused, I put on my most villainous grin. Fine. If you won't help me, I'll just keep pursuing your granddaughter. Maybe I'll make her my concubine. You brat. The old man turned red. Fine. Let's do it. If you die, the world will be rid of a menace. Hey, you aren't planning to kill me on purpose, are you? I asked, suddenly wary. What? Are you scared now? He mocked. If I die, even an imperial tutor like you will be buried with me. And without your protection, your granddaughter's life won't be easy. You better be careful. The old man actually laughed at that. You're the first person who has ever dared to threaten me. For that courage alone, I'll give you what you want. I wondered if he was serious about the danger, but I couldn't turn back. If I didn't gamble now, I couldn't beat the great Yuan Voy. If I didn't beat them, I couldn't reclaim my title as crown prince. And without that title, someone would eventually take my life anyway. Let's begin, I said, bracing myself. The old man looked at me with a shred of newfound respect. None of the other princes would ever risk their lives on a theory. Raise your palm, he commanded. I obeyed. He pressed his palm against mine. I could tell he was curious too. If he could actually pass on the chi he had spent a lifetime cultivating, it would be better than taking it to the grave with him. We're starting, he warned, his face turning solemn. If you feel anything wrong, scream immediately. 3 days later, the Taya Hall was packed with civil and military officials. The 3-day deadline was up. This was the day of the great challenge. Everyone was there, even those who had been on leave or away on business. The emperor hadn't arrived yet, so the ministers were huddled in small groups, whispering. Have you heard? Prince Wu Yuan has been training with Master Jury for 3 days. It won't matter, another whispered back. I heard screams coming from the Eastern Palace every night. They say he's already injured himself trying too hard. Even if he isn't hurt, what can he learn in 3 days? The former crown prince has never touched a weapon in his life. Skeptical murmurs filled the room. A few officials shared cold smiles, spreading rumors to undermine me. By the time the session was supposed to start, half the court was ready to beg the emperor to replace me. My rivals, Prince Wu Zheng and Prince Wu Yun, exchanged looks of pure joy. They were practically celebrating my defeat already. Back at the Eastern Palace, Reincarnation was blushing as she straightened my robes. Today is the day. I can't go to the hall with you, but you cannot lose. Over the last 3 days, something had changed between us. Whenever she was near me, her heart raced. Whenever we were apart, she grew restless. Not even my fried chicken or milk tea could calm her nerves. I reached out and pulled her into my arms, gripping her waist. If I win, do I get a reward? She looked into my eyes, her legs going a bit weak, but she tried to stay composed. If you win, you can ask for whatever you want. Good, but I need some motivation first. What kind of? I cut her off with a deep, dominant kiss. Her hands clenched my robes tightly, then slowly relaxed. Just as she started to melt into it and respond, I stepped back. What are you doing? She asked, looking breathless and strangely empty. You've been getting a bit too bold lately, I teased with a smirk. Always trying to take advantage of this prince. You're shameless, she stammered, trying to turn away to hide her embarrassment. I reached out and took her face in my hands, my voice turning serious. Wait for me to come back. She looked at me, completely lost in the moment. Fine. If you win, everything is yours. Her voice hardened, and a sharp, lethal glint appeared in her eyes. But if you lose, I will die with you. We both knew the truth. I had to win. If I lost, the throne was gone, and the consequences would be fatal. If I lost, I'd be a discarded pawn again. No one would care if I lived or died. I'd be walking straight toward an executioner's blade. Reincarnation could easily walk away from me and save herself. But she didn't. She wasn't looking for an exit strategy. Maybe it was the sudden talent I'd shown, or maybe it was the fried chicken and milk tea. Or maybe, just maybe, it was because I was the only man who treated her with real respect. Whatever the reason, she was ready to live and die by my side. I felt a lump in my throat. I wasn't alone. Behind me, my 8 little maids bowed in perfect unison. Master, they said, their voices steady. We will follow you to the death. I looked back at them. Their faces were full of determination and a deep, hidden affection. I smiled. Don't worry. Just wait for me to come back and lead you all to a life of luxury. If you lose today, Reincarnation interrupted, her voice turning cold and lethal. I'll kill all 8 of them myself before we go. I shivered. Talk about pressure. My lady was definitely angry again. All right, get moving, she said, giving me a playful but sharp glare. You've already worked poor old Zhu Ri to the bone. If you fail now, he'll probably be the first one to take your head. I let out a sheepish laugh. I owe the old man. But hey, I boiled him a massive pot of milk tea as compensation. He can't be that mad. Reincarnation rolled her eyes. I bet Shower drank most of it. I shrugged, not my problem. Stay home and wait for the good news. I made my way to the Hall of Supreme Harmony. Even before I stepped inside, I could hear the whispers. The officials were trashing me. They said I was overconfident. They said I was going to ruin the country. I felt a surge of irritation at these old fossils. If I didn't scam them today, I'd be doing a disservice to my wife and my maids. I marched into the hall. My father, the emperor, looked like he had a massive headache. I didn't give him time to speak. Since so many ministers think I'm incompetent, do you dare to make a wager with me? The affairs of the state are not a game. Prime Minister Wen Batong barked. How dare you speak of wagers in this sacred hall? A chorus of agreement broke out. The buzzing of their voices was driving me crazy. I didn't argue. I simply pulled out the Qilin folding fan, the symbol of the emperor's own authority. The room went dead silent. Prince Wu Zheng's face turned purple. He had just finished 3 days of solitary confinement because of that fan. He caught Wen Batong's eye and gave him a sharp nod. He couldn't speak up himself, but he had his puppets. Your Majesty, Wen Batong cried out, acting outraged. The eldest prince is arrogant. He uses your Qilin fan to bully the court. If this continues, it will lead to disaster. The emperor looked at me, clearly annoyed. I was holding the fan right in front of him. Father, I said before he could scold me, I am willing to trade this Qilin fan for 1 imperial decree. The emperor paused. He wanted that fan back. He knew I was wild. I'd practically kidnapped the imperial tutor, after all. If he could get the fan back legitimately, it was a win for him. Tell me, he said. I smirked. I was about to make them cry. I asked for a decree allowing me to bet against every minister who opposes me. If I win, every one of them forfeits a year's salary to the national treasury for disaster relief. If I lose, I will renounce my title and become a commoner. The hall exploded. They thought I was insane. I was backed into a corner, and instead of begging, I was doubling down. Some ministers started to look nervous. My confidence was unsettling, but most of them sneered. They knew the trash prince better than anyone. There was no way I could win. You honor, don't be impulsive, the emperor warned. My mind is made up, father. Please, grant it. Inside, I was laughing. I was going to bankrupt these fools. The emperor looked at the crowd. He saw I wasn't backing down. What do you all think? The ministers hesitated, but when Batong stepped forward with a fake smile. Since the prince is so determined, I will wager a year's salary just to cheer him on. What a hypocrite. He sounded like he was doing me a favor, but I knew he was already celebrating my downfall. I watched the ministers closely as more and more joined in. I was taking mental notes. These were the people I'd have to purge later. By the time they finished, I realized the hall would be nearly empty if I fired them all. I'd have to be strategic about the cleanup later. They all thought I was a joke, a ghost of my former self. Prince Wu Zheng looked the happiest of all. He had been waiting for this day for years. Fine. The emperor sighed, looking relieved that the arguing had stopped. It is settled. He looked at me, his gaze heavy. You honor, how much confidence do you actually have? I stood tall, letting my aura flare. Father, if it's a contest of words and scholarship, I guarantee they will never dare to pick up a pen in Great Wu again. The sheer arrogance in my voice made the room shake. Even the ministers who hated me had to admit my presence was unmatched. The emperor's face lit up. Good. That is what I wanted to hear. But Wu Zheng couldn't let me have the moment. And what about the martial contest? The hall went quiet again. Everyone knew I'd been practicing at the last minute. Rumors said I'd even been injured during training. In the world of martial arts, a hidden internal injury was a death sentence. The emperor's smile faded as he looked at me, waiting for an answer. The atmosphere in the hall grew heavy again. For the last 3 days, I had completely locked down the Eastern Palace. Not even my father, the Emperor, knew what was happening inside. He had heard the same rumors as the ministers, but with one key difference. This morning, he had received a secret letter from Master Zhu Ri. It contained only one line. The first prince, Wu Yuan, is a true genius. That letter left my father both shocked and delighted, but also deeply confused. He stared at me now, his eyes full of expectation. Everyone else, however, looked at me with nothing but doubt. I let a smirk play on my lips. As for the martial contest, I said, I only have one thing to say to our guests. Men can cry, it's not a crime. The ministers nearly choked. It was such a ridiculous statement that a few of them actually snickered. I stayed perfectly serious. Don't laugh. Come on, while the guests aren't here yet, let me teach you a few lines. We need to show them that Great Wu is a land of etiquette and grand spirit. The ministers weren't about to join in my madness, but my father was actually moved by the words grand spirit and etiquette. Well said, Yuaner, the emperor barked. Listen up. If Wu Yuan wins later, anyone who refuses to sing along will have another year's salary deducted on top of the first. Jaws hit the floor. This was the first time anyone had seen the emperor support such a nonsensical idea. Even Prime Minister Wen looked like he'd swallowed a fly. I was having the time of my life. Come on, let's practice our victory song. Follow me. Men, go ahead and cry. Cry, it's not a crime. The melody was strange and the lyrics were embarrassing to say out loud, but the emperor glared at the crowd. What? Are you disobeying my decree? We wouldn't dare, they shouted in unison. A second later, the great hall of supreme harmony echoed with the most bizarre chorus in history. I bit my lip to keep from laughing. It was comedy gold. After a moment, I waved my hand. All right, that's enough. Those few lines will do. The ministers exhaled in relief, but their faces remained twisted. They realized that if Great Yu actually lost and they sang this, it would be like pinning the losers to a pillar of shame and whipping them 100 times. It was a viciously petty move. Looking at my smiling face, several ministers felt a chill run down their spines. They started to regret offending me, praying that I wouldn't win. Otherwise, they'd be singing that song to themselves for the rest of their lives. Just then, a guard announced the arrival of the delegation. Shangguan Jinjia led a team of 15 people into the hall with their heads held high. She was dressed in formal attire, looking elegant, noble, and incredibly domineering. To me, she looked exactly like a boss lady CEO from my old world. Having a concubine like that wouldn't be bad at all. I was busy daydreaming when a sudden chill ran down my back. It was killing intent. My eyes snapped to a young, cold-faced man walking half a step behind Shangguan Jinjia. The murderous aura was definitely coming from him. The guy looked like I had killed his father. Actually, it felt more personal than that. If it wasn't a blood feud, it was a romantic one. I like to look at things from a bystander's perspective, a habit of being a transmigrator, and it clicked instantly. He was jealous. He and Shangguan Jinjia were probably close, maybe even promised to each other, and my demand to make her my concubine had pushed him over the edge. Instead of getting angry, I felt a surge of accomplishment. Asterisk, you like staring? I'll give you something to look at. Asterisk. I walked straight up to Shangguan Jinjia. Shangguan, you're here. I haven't seen you in 3 days, and I've missed you dearly. I can't wait to have you as my concubine. The hall went silent. Nobody expected me to flirt with her so openly in front of everyone. The Great Yu delegation looked furious, and the man beside her turned red in the eyes, looking ready to strike. I ignored him completely, staring straight at her. I expected her to be livid, but she actually smiled. Is that so? Well, I've decided I'm taking you as my consort. I guarantee I'll be bringing you back to Great Yu today. The playfulness in her eyes gave me goosebumps. I wanted her as a concubine, but she seemed to want me as a toy to bring home and torment. I reached out and brushed my fingers against her pale, delicate cheek. I have a feeling we'll be entering the bridal chamber tonight. Her expression flickered, not because of my touch, but because the man beside her was about to snap. She turned and hissed at him. If you can't even handle this much, you're pathetic. Her provocation worked. The man calmed down instantly, though his eyes remained fixed on me like I was a dead man. She turned back to dismiss me, but I leaned in, resting my chin near her shoulder and breathing softly into her ear. He's interesting. Doesn't look like he's from Great U, though. She stiffened for a fraction of a second before regaining her composure. Does it matter? I narrowed my eyes. The way she spoke to him, as an equal, told me everything. He was likely from the kingdom of Tianli. Her refusal to explain only confirmed it. She was too smart to give me more information, but she knew I was onto her. Interesting. Very interesting, I whispered. By the way, you smell amazing. I leaned in and gave the tip of her ear a quick, playful lick. She shivered as if struck by lightning. You bastard. She was genuinely fuming now, but I had already skipped away. To the crowd, it looked like we had just shared an intimate embrace. The ministers were wide-eyed, but my father was beaming. In his mind, I had just scored a point for Great Wu. Prince Wu Yuan, show some self-respect, an official from Great Yu barked. Show our princess the proper dignity, or these peace talks are over. Before I could even respond, some of the self-righteous hypocrites on our side started chiming in, claiming my behavior was inappropriate. I just stood there, wearing a grin that told them exactly how much I cared. I hope the envoys from Great Yu will not take offense to this. A voice called out, cutting through the tension. I snapped my head around, glaring at the speaker. Who the hell are you? The man didn't expect me to charge straight at him. He stood his ground, trying to look dignified. I am Sun Tianbing, Minister of Rights. Sun Tianbing? Fine. I'll remember you. I spat. He huffed, adjusting his robes. I am merely doing my duty. As the first prince, how can you be so ignorant of proper etiquette? It is disgraceful. My blood boiled. I was going to settle scores with these hypocrites later to avoid making us look like a joke in front of foreigners, but this idiot couldn't help himself. He was practically begging for it. How dare you insult a court official in the Hall of Supreme Harmony? Sun Tianbing barked, his face flushing with rage. To hell with your etiquette. I stepped closer, my voice echoing. Great Wu is looked down upon precisely because of people like you. What do you think this Great Yu delegation is here for? They're here to bully us. They're standing over your head ready to piss on you. And you're standing there like a complete moron, mouth wide open, smiling as you catch it. A wave of stifled laughter broke out. Even the Great Yu envoys couldn't hide their smirks. It was a crude analogy, but it was accurate. Sun Tianbing's face went from red to purple. He pointed a shaking finger at me. He stuttered for a long time, unable to find a single comeback. Finally, my father, the emperor, had seen enough. Silence, he roared. Sun Tianbing, after today, you are relieved of your duties. Go home and reflect on your life. Sun Tianbing froze. He never expected this. He looked instinctively toward Prime Minister Wen for help, but the old fox wouldn't even meet his eyes. Your Majesty, I was wrong. The emperor waved a hand dismissively, and guards immediately dragged the screaming minister out. Technically, Sun Tianbing was just doing his job, but timing is everything. After I framed his words as borderline treasonous in plain language, nobody was brave enough to plead for him. It was clear to everyone now, my father was backing me. The winds in Great Wu were shifting. Shangguan Jinzhao watched the drama with a mocking smile. Your officials are quite interesting, Prince Wu Yuan. And based on your words, it seems you aren't very interested in continuing these peace talks. If that's the case, as our officials said, perhaps there's no point in staying. The ministers turned pale. My father's expression tightened. They were terrified of the talks collapsing, but I wasn't going to let her play me. Then go, I said, shrugging. You act like you actually came here with sincerity. If you were sincere, you wouldn't have come back for a rematch after losing at the Palace of Mental Cultivation. If you want to leave, get out. Stop wasting our time. The Great Yu delegation was stunned. I had called their bluff. The man standing next to Shangguan Jinzhao panicked, tugging at her sleeve. She looked annoyed. She knew she couldn't actually leave. Great Yu needed this, but she was frustrated that her own people were showing weakness first. She forced a thin, fake smile. If I truly left, that would be a lack of sincerity on my part. The tension in the room snapped like a tight string. My father let out a breath he'd been holding, his eyelids twitching from the stress. Seeing me firmly in control, he regained his composure. Good, the emperor said. The peace talks are urgent. You honor, begin your contest with Princess Shangguan. Fine, she said, stepping forward. We shall start with a literary duel. I cleaned my ear with a finger, looking bored. Whatever poem you've brought, just bring it out. Let's get this over with. She let out a short, cold laugh. She had originally prepared several poems, but after hearing that I had composed 7 or 8 masterpieces in a single night, she had scrapped that plan. To her, I was a freak of nature. We aren't writing poetry today, she said, looking quite pleased with herself. My heart sank a little. No poetry? That was bad. My head was a library of thousands of Tang and Song dynasty classics. If she changed the game to something obscure, I might actually be in trouble. Under the curious gaze of the court, Shangguan Jinjia turned and bowed deeply toward the middle of her delegation. We shall trouble you, Master Su, she said respectfully. An elderly man with an extraordinary aura stepped forward. The moment he appeared, a gasp went up from the Great Wu's side. My God, is that Su's son? The sage of calligraphy. The legendary master is still alive? This is a blessing for scholars everywhere. The whispers turned into a roar of admiration. Even my father looked shocked. I realized then that we were looking at a living legend. A calligraphy master. This was going to be a problem. Shangguan Jinjia beamed at the reaction. She had gone to great lengths to recruit this man. Su Sun looked kind, his face much softer than our own imperial tutor, Zhu Ri. Greetings, Emperor of Great Wu, Su Sun said, bowing. My father couldn't be rude to a man of his stature, even if his presence was a disaster for us. Master, there is no need for such ceremony. I am surprised you would travel so far at your age. Su Sun smiled, ignoring the hidden jab in my father's words. I simply wish to find an opponent who could truly impress me before I pass on. Then I could die in peace. My father's face soured. The ministers looked defeated. How could anyone compete with the sage of calligraphy? But then, I let out a loud, mocking laugh that cut through the reverence. I thought we were getting a dignified old man. Turns out he's just another hypocrite. Looking for an opponent? You think you're some invincible hero from a legend. Every eye in the hall fixed on me. I was standing there, casually picking my nose. Even my own people wanted to slap me. To insult a master that even the emperor treated with respect was unthinkable. The hall erupted. How dare you? Do you even know who he is? Apologize. You must apologize to the master. The insults flew at me from every direction. There were so many people screaming that I couldn't even tell who was saying what. Shangguan Jinjia looked delighted. She was finally seeing me get torn down. Silence, Chief Eunuch Su shouted. His high-pitched voice did the trick instantly. I looked at him and grinned. You know, Eunuch Su, you both have the same last name, but your voice is much more pleasant to listen to. I had just compared a world-renowned sage of calligraphy to a palace eunuch. It was the ultimate insult. Eunuch Su looked like he'd just won the lottery, beaming at me. When someone tried to start shouting again, he bellowed even louder. Anyone who speaks again is disrespecting the emperor. That shut them up. But no one was more fuming than the great master Su Sun himself. He had never been treated like this in his entire life. To be compared to a palace eunuch was an insult beyond tolerance. Su Sun glared at me, his eyes bulging with fury. Ignorant child, he spat. Are you the one I am supposed to compete against? I didn't blink. In fact, I did something no one expected. I never said I'd be the one competing with you personally, I said casually. The Great Wu officials immediately shot me looks of pure disdain. Just moments ago, I was boldly making bets with them, and now I was backing down? I was cowering. But honestly, I couldn't blame them for thinking that. Competing against Su Sun was a guaranteed loss. No one knew how good my calligraphy was, but they assumed it was trash. It made sense that I'd try to dodge the fight. My father, the emperor, shook his head and sighed. He didn't even know what to say anymore. As for my brother, Wu Zheng, and the other princes, they were just leaning back, waiting to watch me become a laughingstock. Shangguan Jinjia knew that Su Sun wasn't good at verbal sparring, so she stepped in for him. What's this? Is our brilliant Prince Wu Yuan actually afraid? Not at all, I replied with a smirk. I just don't think this little old man is worthy of being my opponent yet. If he wants to challenge me, he has to beat our Prime Minister first. I hadn't forgotten how that old Prime Minister had been running his mouth earlier. I wanted to see him squirm. Over at his seat, the Prime Minister looked like he'd just swallowed a fly. He knew his calligraphy was decent, but he was no match for a sage. He started opening his mouth to make an excuse, to find any way out of it. But my father spoke first. "Prime Minister, go ahead and give it a try." It wasn't that the emperor wanted to help me bully the old man. It was just that, in terms of calligraphy, the prime minister was the only one in our court who even stood a chance of putting up a fight. The prime minister's face turned black, but he had to bite the bullet and accept. I was loving this. I wasn't in a hurry to crush Su Sun myself. I wanted to let the bullet fly for a bit. I wanted the prime minister to realize exactly what happened when you picked the wrong side. As the prime minister walked forward, the surrounding officials started showering him with flattery. He actually seemed to enjoy it. For a moment, he was the protagonist of the hall. He probably figured that even if he lost, there was no shame in losing to a legend like Su Sun. In fact, his reputation might even grow just because he was deemed worthy to stand on the same stage. He was standing there, looking all proud and satisfied, when I decided to ruin his mood. "Prime Minister," I called out, "why do I see zero fighting spirit in your eyes? You haven't already planned out how you're going to lose, have you?" Everyone could see he had no intention of winning, but I was the only one brazen enough to say it out loud. I didn't give him an ounce of face. "Nonsense," the prime minister barked, his face reddening. "I will give it my all. I will use every bit of knowledge I have lived for." I let out a cold laugh. "Giving it your all? What kind of weak promise is that? You should do what I did. Make a military pledge. If you lose, you resign from your position as prime minister." "What?" He nearly jumped out of his skin. He pointed a shaking finger at me. "I am the prime minister of the imperial court." "And I'm the prince of the imperial court," I shot back. "What? You think being a prime minister makes you more important than me?" I wasn't giving him an inch of breathing room. Even my rival, Wu Zheng, was breaking into a cold sweat for the old man. The other ministers stayed silent, making a mental note to avoid me at all costs in the future. I was too dangerous to provoke. Just as the prime minister was about to explode from frustration, my father stepped in. "You honor, stop messing around. The prime minister will do his best. If he doesn't, he'll naturally retire and return to his hometown." The prime minister and I both froze. I had to fight to keep from laughing out loud. My father was a pro. With one sentence, he had sealed the old man's fate. If he lost, he was done. The prime minister's face collapsed. All his pride vanished. "For Great Wu, I would walk through fire and blades," he shouted, though his voice sounded like he was on the verge of tears. Shangwan Jinjia, who was clearly bored with the drama, finally spoke. "Since the prime minister is ready, let's begin. Master Su says the prime minister may go first." It is a gesture of respect from a master to a junior. The prime minister nodded bitterly. He knew that if he watched Su Sun write first, he'd lose the courage to even pick up a brush. The 4 treasures of the study were prepared. He went through a whole ritual, washing his hands, rinsing his mouth, straightening his robes. He was actually getting into the zone. To be fair, his foundation was strong. If his opponent weren't a sage, he might have actually dominated the room. I stayed quiet for once. I liked to mess with people, but I had limits. I watched as he began to write. His brush moved like a dancing dragon, bold and fluid. It was good, very good. The onlookers were nodding in approval. Shangwan Jinjia was watching too, a small smile playing on her lips. She could see the quality, but she knew it wasn't master level. It wouldn't be enough. While she was lost in her smug thoughts, I reached out and gave her backside a firm squeeze. She jumped, nearly screaming. I leaned into her ear and whispered, "Not bad. Very firm. You must work out a lot. Still, you're not quite on the level of my wife, Rian." I had just felt her up and insulted her in the same breath. Only I could get away with that. "You're looking for death," she hissed, turning to strike me. "Don't move," I threatened. "Unless you want everyone to see the great princess of you being handled like a common girl." It worked. She froze, her body trembling with rage. "Wu Yuan," she whispered through gritted teeth. "You will pay for this." "Please," I scoffed. "As if you'd let me off easy if I didn't touch you." "That might not be true," she said, her voice suddenly turning soft and seductive. "After all, you are my future consort." "Give it a rest," I said, glancing toward the back of the room. "I think the guy with the long, donkey-looking face is the one who wants to be your husband." I pointed toward the man who had been radiating killing intent toward me earlier. Shangwan Jinjia's expression shifted instantly. "What do you mean by that?" she asked, staring at me. Oh, come on. You know exactly what I mean. If I'm not mistaken, that guy isn't from Great Yu. He's from the kingdom of Tianli, isn't he? A flash of genuine panic flickered in her beautiful eyes. I noticed a flicker in Shangwan Jinjia's eyes. It was subtle, but I caught it. She realized I was bluffing. Humph, she sneered, regaining her composure. If you want to know who he is, find out yourself. Don't think you can play mind games with me. She was clearly annoyed. My little trick had forced a reaction out of her, and she hated that she'd let her guard down. I couldn't help but chuckle. It seems I hit the nail on the head, I said. I'm just curious how you have the courage to crawl into bed with the kingdom of Tianli. They're wolves. A little lamb like Great Yu won't even be a snack for them once they're done with you. I have no idea what you're talking about, she said, her voice turning cold and professional. Great Yu is only here for peace talks. Sure, I mocked. And I'm the emperor of the heavens. Do I look like I believe you? She started to argue, but I gave her backside another firm squeeze. Her entire body went rigid. A soft, involuntary moan escaped her lips. That's a lovely sound, I whispered. Here's some advice. If you don't want Great Yu to burn, stop playing with fire. Following me is your only real choice. Her eyes turned ice cold. In a flash, a sharp needle appeared in her hand. I felt my scalp tingle with fear and jumped back immediately, letting her go. She didn't chase me. She just stood there, smoothing her dress. Great Wu is too weak, she said flatly. There is no longer a reason for your nation to exist. My smile faded. Her words were heavy. I had been trying to gauge the depth of the alliance between Great Yu and Tianli, but the answer I got was grim. Their cooperation went much deeper than I had hoped. Words wouldn't be enough to break them apart. Shangwan Jinjia turned away from me, dismissing my existence entirely. At the same time, Prime Minister Wen finished his calligraphy. He had written over 100 characters, the classic of filial piety. The court officials gathered around, murmuring in awe. The brushwork was elegant, balancing strength and grace. It was subtle where it needed to be and sharp at the finish. Prime Minister Wen, your style has reached a new level of divinity, one official gushed. Truly the role model for all scholars, another added. Old Wen was beaming. The pressure of the situation had pushed him to perform better than ever. He looked at his work with immense pride, convinced this was the pinnacle of his life's work. He bowed and thanked everyone, soaking in the praise. I looked at him and sighed. Was everyone here blind? They didn't see the utter disdain on Shangwan Jinjia's face. And they definitely didn't notice Su Sun, the so-called sage of calligraphy. He had glanced at Wen's first character and then looked away, never bothering to check the rest. To a master like him, Wen's work wasn't even worth a second look. It was embarrassing. I almost regretted pushing the old man forward. Shangwan Jinjia finally had enough. She was still fuming from my wandering hands and needed a target. She glared at the Prime Minister. This, she scoffed loudly. Only in a place like Great Wu would this be considered good. The room went silent. The joyful atmosphere vanished instantly. Old Wen's face turned red. He was riding high on his perceived success and genuinely thought he could challenge Su Sun. Princess Shangwan, Wen said, puffing out his chest. Are you only saying that because my work has made you nervous? She laughed. You really are an interesting man, Prime Minister. Fine. Let's ask Master Su what he thinks of your masterpiece. She gestured to Su Sun. She didn't even have to tell him to be harsh. Su Sun was already looking for a way to punish me for my earlier disrespect. He took one brief, sweeping look at the paper. Garbage, he said. I snorted, covering my mouth with my hand. Sorry, I muttered. I couldn't help it. Old Wen looked like he'd been slapped. Master Su, that is beneath your status. How can you call my work garbage? Su Sun looked down his nose at him like a teacher scolding a dim-witted child. Your strokes look like they're sweeping away armies, but they lack the actual spirit of a conqueror. Your lines try to mimic a flying dragon, but they look like a dying snake. Your writing has the shape, but no soul. It's a pool of stagnant water. Each word hit one like a thunderbolt. His proud posture began to crumble. By the time Su Sun finished, the old man nearly collapsed. One of our officials stepped forward to defend him. You're only saying that because you want to win. You're supposed to be a master, but you're just being petty. Who would believe you? It was a fair point, but Su Sun didn't even bother arguing with a nobody. He kept his eyes on one. If I'm not mistaken, Su Sun said calmly. You were trying to mimic the style of the great master, Guo Baishu. The room erupted in whispers. Guo Baishu was a legend, the immortal of calligraphy. His original works had vanished years ago. Su Sun was one of the few people alive who had actually seen them. You've managed to copy the form, Su Sun continued, but you have none of the soul. Do you admit it? Old One looked defeated. I found a fragment of his work years ago. I've practiced for decades, but this is all I've achieved. The morale of the Great Wu officials shattered. They couldn't believe he was giving up so easily, but seeing Wen's broken expression, they had to accept it. Even the Emperor sighed. He knew the game was over the moment Su Sun identified the source of the style. Su Sun's mood improved as he saw her despair. Don't be too discouraged, Prime Minister. Perhaps one day you will truly understand Gui's secrets. One could only nod, his face burning with shame. Since I've seen a copy of Master Gui's work today, I suppose I should return the favor, Su Sun said, picking up a brush. I shall write a piece of my own. Su Sun stood there, acting like he was doing us a huge favor. He picked up his brush with an air of fake modesty, inviting everyone to appreciate his work. I watched him and felt a wave of disgust. He was just showing off. Instead of all these flowery words, he should have just shouted, "Everyone look at me. I'm about to act like a genius." I couldn't help it. I rolled my eyes at him hard. My Prime Minister, one, might have his faults, but he was my official to bully, not this old man's. Who did Su Sun think he was? The room went silent. Both our people and the rivals from Great Yu looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Even Old One stared at me, dumbfounded. He looked touched, but also incredibly awkward. It was a strange moment, but it broke the tension. Well said. My father, the Emperor, was the first to react. He looked thrilled. He loved that I was standing up to them. In his eyes, we could fight behind closed doors all we want, but when an enemy showed up, we had to bite back. For a second, he looked at me like he was seeing his younger self. My brother, Wu Zheng, didn't share the sentiment. He looked like he wanted to murder me. He never realized our father liked this kind of rebellious streak. Su Sun, on the other hand, looked like he'd been slapped in public. He was a master, a legend, and here I was treating him like a nuisance. He turned to Princess Shangguan Jinjia, his face red with anger. Princess, I will not hold back. I will show Great Wu what it means to be untouchable. Shangguan Jinjia frowned. She wanted to win, but she didn't want Great Wu to be humiliated too badly for her own reasons. She looked at me, her voice cold but warning. If I were you, I would apologize to Master Su immediately. Otherwise, you'll regret this. I didn't give a damn about her warning. Why? You sound worried. Are you falling for me? I hate indecisive women. Don't worry, I'll train that out of you later. She looked like she was going to cough up blood. She turned to Su Sun, her eyes flashing with irritation. Master Su, don't hold back. Give them a lesson they'll never forget. Su Sun nodded, satisfied. I just wagged a finger at the princess. Naughty girl. So playful. The court officials were stunned by my boldness, but for the first time, they felt a sense of relief. Great Yu had been too arrogant. They brought a literal saint of calligraphy just to bully our prime minister. Seeing me talk back to them felt good. I didn't even realize my flirting was actually boosting national morale. Shangguan Jinjia's face turned bright red. Just wait. Let's see if you can still laugh in a moment. I shrugged and watched Su Sun begin to write. Since the old man is starting, I'll stop teasing you. I don't want you making excuses when you lose. She actually laughed at that. How could the saint of calligraphy lose? Especially since one had already admitted defeat. She stayed quiet, letting the room fall into a heavy silence as Su Sun moved his brush. His movements were fluid and powerful. Every stroke was perfect, full of strength and soul. Even Old One, watching from the side, sighed in defeat. A grain of rice cannot compete with the brilliance of the moon, he whispered. His friends didn't even know how to comfort him. The gap in skill was just too obvious. I curled my lip, unimpressed. Shangguan Jinjia caught my expression. While everyone was mesmerized by the calligraphy, she leaned in close. What? Are you still not convinced, Prince Wu Yuan? I saw an opportunity and took it. Before she could react, I reached out and pulled her close, my arm firmly around her waist. She gasped, shocked that I'd dare touch her in the middle of the imperial hall. You really think I won't kill you? She hissed, a sharp hidden spike appearing in her hand. I didn't move. I didn't even flinch. Stop trying to scare me. I was careless before, but I figured it out. Even if you want to stab me, your little boyfriend over there won't let you. I pointed toward the crowd. That cold-eyed man from her delegation was staring at us, his gaze filled with murderous intent. He looked like he wanted to sprint across the room and tear me apart, yet he didn't move an inch. Shangguan Jinjiao looked at him, and for a split second, I saw disappointment in her eyes. Look at him, I whispered in her ear. This is the man you chose? His woman is being held by another man, and he just stands there staring? Does he think he can kill me with his eyes? Her face darkened. I could tell she was frustrated with the man's hesitation, even if it was for the sake of their mission. She took a deep breath and hid her weapon. Wu Yuan, no matter what you're planning, you won't win today, she said, her voice dropping to a low, meaningful tone. And Great Wu is going to lose much more than just a competition. I looked at her, surprised by the weight of her words. She smiled, a bit of genuine amusement crossing her face. You know, you're not entirely hateful. Aside from being foul-mouthed and lewd, you don't have many virtues. But I suppose I admire your spirit. I'll take that as a compliment, I said, leaning in. Does this mean you're starting to like me? You don't have the right to be liked by me yet, she said softly. Because in a little while, you might die at his hands. She glanced toward the cold-eyed man. My eyebrows shot up. So, he's planning to kill me during the martial arts contest? She gave me a vague, playful smile. Who knows? I didn't say anything. I laughed. Little girl, telling me this. Aren't you afraid I'll just run away? Or do you really love me and want me to stay safe? Her eyes turned icy again. Don't flatter yourself. I just want to give him a reason to teach you a lesson. Now, take your hand off me. I smiled and let go, watching her compose herself. So shy? It's fine. I'll enjoy training you later. She didn't say another word, but her silence spoke volumes. The real fight was only just beginning. I realized then that Shangguan Jinjiao wasn't invincible. There was a way to get to her. I just had to find the right opening. By the way, I said, trying to sound casual, what's the name of that useless coward following you around? I didn't expect her to actually answer. I was just testing the waters. Tian Ba, she replied. I grinned. Tian Ba? That's a pretty bold name for someone who looks like he'd crumble in a stiff breeze. He's lucky the name hasn't killed him yet. Honestly, he looks more like a Wang Ba, a turtle. Shangguan Jinjiao looked at me with a strange, unreadable expression. Is that all you have to say after hearing that name? What else is there? I asked. I was genuinely confused. I didn't get what she was hinting at. Never mind, she said, her voice dropping into something more serious. Now, I'm actually looking forward to your fight with him. If you've got the guts, show me if you really have the talent to create a miracle. She left me with those cryptic words. As soon as she was out of earshot, I started looking for someone to ask about this Tian Ba. Based on her reaction, the guy wasn't some nobody. The name sounded familiar, but my memories were a mess. The previous owner of this body spent all his time chasing skirts and ignoring the world. I had no useful intel. I scanned the room, but I couldn't find a single person I could trust to talk to. I certainly couldn't go up to the emperor and ask him. Forget it, I muttered to myself. He's just a turtle hiding in his shell. How much trouble could he really cause? I shrugged it off and walked back toward the center of the hall. The atmosphere had changed. Su Sun had finished his calligraphy. Unlike when the Prime Minister finished his piece, the room was eerily silent. A massive crowd had gathered, but no one spoke. They looked like they were in a trance, mesmerized by the powerful strokes on the paper. I rolled my eyes. Seriously? It's just a few words. Is all this drama necessary? I whispered it to myself, but in that dead silent hall, my voice carried like a boulder dropped into a still pond. The reaction was instant. The crowd turned on me, their glares sharp enough to kill. Outrageous. How dare you insult Master Su's work? Ignorant. This is pure sacrilege. As expected of the trash prince. He doesn't know a masterpiece when he sees one. The insults got nastier from there. If we weren't in the middle of the Imperial Hall, I would have broken a few jaws. I was pissed, but I didn't have the scholarly credentials to argue them down yet. Go ahead and bark, I thought. Let's see if you're still laughing in a few minutes. The Great U delegation was loving it. They kept piling on the praise for Su Sun, using every flowery metaphor in the book. My own people, the Great Wu officials, stayed silent. Most of them actually looked like they agreed with the praise. They were genuinely impressed by the enemy's work. Shangguan Jinjia stepped forward, and the room went quiet. Her authority was absolute. "Everyone," she said, "this contest has no official judge. Every person here is a witness. However, since Master Su commented on the Prime Minister's work earlier, it's only fair that the Prime Minister returns the favor. Lord Wen, please tell us what you think of Master Su's calligraphy." It was a trap. If the Prime Minister lied, he'd look like a sore loser and ruin Great Wu's reputation. If he told the truth, he'd be admitting defeat and inviting the Emperor's wrath. Old Wen looked like he regretted ever waking up this morning. He had come here to watch the show and maybe kick me while I was down. Instead, he'd ended up right in the line of fire while I stood on the sidelines watching the fun. Finally, he sighed and bowed to Su Sun. "Master Su's work is beyond my reach. It is like a wild horse leaping through the sky, leaving the world behind. It is a soaring dragon, moving between the void and reality. Every stroke, every turn, is perfection. Master Su, you truly are the closest living person to the calligraphy immortal, Master Gua." It was a total surrender. The Prime Minister was floored. The Emperor's face was dark, but he knew and had no choice. Su Sun laughed, looking incredibly pleased with himself. "Lord Wen, I underestimated your character," Su Sun said condescendingly. "To compare me to Master Gua, I am honored. If you ever want to learn, I might give you a few pointers." Wen's face twitched. He was the Prime Minister of Great Wu. He couldn't become the student of a great Yu scholar without shaming his entire country. "Master Su is too kind. I may lack talent, but I still have my dignity." Su Sun just smiled, his eyes full of disdain. Shangguan Jinjia took over. "Since the Prime Minister has spoken, Great Wu loses this round. I assume no one objects." She glanced at me, her eyes full of provocation. The Emperor was vibrating with tension. He scanned his ministers, but every single one of them looked at the floor. Old Wen even dropped to his knees. "Your Majesty, I have failed you," Wen cried. "We are incompetent," the other ministers chimed in. If the foreigners weren't watching, the Emperor probably would have started executing people. At the moment of truth, all these loyal subjects could say was that they were useless. He looked at his sons, but they were all staring at their boots. Except for me. I was standing there, casually digging in my ear. The Emperor's eyes locked onto me, filled with fury. Then, a thought seemed to strike him. He remembered the massive bets I had made with the ministers earlier. If we lost, I'd lose everything. I should have been the most worried person in the room. Unless, I still had a card to play. The Emperor suppressed his anxiety and tried to sound calm. "Does no one else wish to challenge Master Su?" Silence. Su Sun looked like he was ready to declare victory and leave. I kept digging in my ear, acting like I hadn't heard a word. The Emperor cursed under his breath. He knew my game. "I hereby promise," he announced loudly, "that whoever can defeat Su Sun may ask me for any reward they desire." I stopped digging in my ear and smiled. The Emperor saw it and looked half annoyed, half relieved. He knew I was a greedy bastard who wouldn't move an inch without a payout. I stepped forward and bowed. "Father, I'll take that challenge." I had been waiting for my father to say those exact words. I watched the drama unfold for long enough, and now it was my time to shine. These ministers had spent the whole night looking down their noses at me. It was time they learned exactly what their prince was capable of. I glanced back at the crowd. Every single official was staring at me like I was a complete idiot. It was pathetic. These people really were blind. I felt a surge of annoyance, but I pushed it down. The moment of total vindication was coming. I just had to be patient. Across the hall, Shangguan Jinjia didn't look surprised at all. She had been watching me. She noticed that despite the pressure, I hadn't shown a single trace of panic. Even after seeing Su Sun's masterpiece, I hadn't flinched. To her, that meant one of two things. I was either a master of bluffing, or I actually had the skills to back it up. Her intuition told her it was the latter. She realized that the rumors of me being a brainless, hedonistic prince were lies. Between my poetry and my schemes, I was becoming a very dangerous opponent. She sighed softly, her expression a mix of anxiety and strange anticipation. The Great Yu delegation, however, wasn't as observant as their princess. They were losing their patience. What is this? One of them barked. Are you just trying to stall for time? You've already lost. Just admit it. Another one chimed in. Prime Minister Wen is your best calligrapher, and he failed. Just accept reality. Do you really think a relay race of losers will change anything? I didn't feel like arguing with words. I reached out, grabbed a wet ink stone from the table, and flung it straight at them. The heavy stone skipped across the floor, splashing ink everywhere and sending the delegates scrambling in a panic. Now, I said with a cold sneer, can you all shut up? They pointed at me, trembling with rage, but they were speechless. You are the eldest prince. How can you be so crude? Is this how Great Wu treats its guests? I let out a sharp laugh. Guests? Don't make me laugh. If I want to grate you, would you treat me with wine and songs? Do I really need to spell it out? Should I tell everyone exactly why your delegation is really here? That shut them up instantly. Diplomacy is a fragile game of shadows and distrust. If I aired their dirty laundry now, the emperor might decide to keep them all here, permanently. I turned my gaze back to the old man. I'm going to have a little match with old man Su here. If he wins, the whole contest is yours. If he loses, you stop your whining. When none of the delegates dared to answer, I looked at Shangwan Jinjia. What does the princess think? She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked at Su's son. The old calligrapher was fuming. He had heard enough of my arrogance and was itching for a chance to put me in my place. Even if the princess said no, he would have challenged me anyway. Ignorant child, Su's son spat. Today, I will teach you that there is always a mountain higher than the one you stand on. Shangwan Jinjia saw the fire in his eyes and knew he was going all out. She was curious. Prime Minister Wen was already defeated. Where was I going to find someone, or some skill, to beat a master who was truly trying? This old fossil really thinks he's something special, I muttered to myself. Fine. Today, I'm giving him a lesson he won't forget. The Great Wu officials were all shaking their heads. They thought I was just throwing a tantrum to save face, and that in the end, I'd lose both the match and my reputation. But since the emperor hadn't stopped me, they stayed quiet. Fine, the emperor said, his voice laced with exhaustion. Since both sides agree, let the contest continue. Su Sun stepped forward immediately. I'll go first. He didn't even care who I was bringing out. He just wanted to crush my spirit. Shangwan Jinjia tried to intervene. Master Su, you can use your previous work. There is no need to exhaust yourself. No, Su Sun snapped. I won't have anyone saying I bullied a junior. I have a new piece in mind. A war song for the boy. He picked up his brush, and the atmosphere in the room shifted. This time, it was different. We could all feel a surge of raw, piercing energy coming from him. It was a spirit of grand ambition and battle-hardened intent. Even the Great Yu delegates were stunned. They had never seen Su Sun this focused. Great Wu is just asking for humiliation, they whispered. In this state, Master Su is invincible. Even my father, the emperor, felt his eyelids twitching as he watched the old man work. Then he looked at me, standing there, picking at my nails, looking like I didn't have a care in the world. He felt a headache coming on. Chief Eunuch Su, the emperor whispered. Did I make a mistake? Should I have trusted him? He was spiraling into self-doubt. Looking back, he couldn't understand why he had let me take the lead against a titan like Su's son. Eunuch Su gave a wry smile. Your Majesty, you've never been one to give up. At this point, we have to believe the prince can pull off a miracle. After all, who expected him to shock the world back at the palace the other day? The emperor sighed. True, but the more I look at him, the more my head hurts. He wanted to grab me by the collar and shake some sense into me. I didn't know what they were saying, of course. I just looked up, caught my father's eye, and gave him a bright, confident grin.